She woke up married to the most dangerous man in America, and neither of them remembered saying yes. One night, one city that never sleeps, one woman who refused to bow, and one man who had never been told no, a drugged wedding, a viral scandal, and a criminal empire teetering on the edge of war. This is not a love story. This is a survival story that accidentally became love. If this is your kind of story, hit like right now and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see exactly how far this story has traveled. Now let's begin. The Bellagio at 2 o'clock in the morning was its own kind of animal. It didn't sleep, didn't slow. It just kept breathing. All recycled air and manufactured oxygen, the kind of atmosphere designed to make you forget that time was passing, that money was leaving your hands, that somewhere outside those walls the real world still existed with its bills and its hunger and its brutal indifference. Inside, everything was gold light and manufactured luck, the carpets red as old blood, the chandeliers overhead throwing fractured light across 500 faces, all wearing the same expression, desperate hope dressed up as confidence. Sienna Vale had stopped being impressed by any of it approximately 4 months into the job. She moved through the casino floor the way she moved through everything, fast, deliberate, her weight balanced on the balls of her feet the way her first dance teacher had taught her when she was 7 years old. The silver tray she carried had 9 glasses on it, heavy crystal, expensive whiskey, the kind of scotch that cost more per pour than she made in 2 hours of work. She had learned not to think about that math anymore. Her black uniform fit well because she'd had it taken in herself. The original had been cut for someone 6 inches shorter and 20 pounds heavier, and showing up to management about it had been a waste of breath. She'd bought a needle and thread from the drugstore on Fremont Street and handled it on a Tuesday afternoon while her cat, a bad-tempered orange tabby named Marco, had supervised from the arm of her couch. That was how Sienna handled most things, quietly, with her own 2 hands. Her feet hurt. They always hurt by 2 a.m. She had been on the floor since 8 p.m., and before that, she'd taught 2 back-to-back contemporary dance classes at the studio, one beginner group of 8-year-olds who had more enthusiasm than coordination, one advanced group of teenagers who had more attitude than enthusiasm. She had approximately 4 hours left on her shift, and then a 40-minute bus ride home, and then 5 hours of sleep before she needed to be back at the studio by noon to deal with a broken HVAC system that her landlord had been promising to fix for 3 weeks. She was 26 years old, and she was exhausted in a way that had started to feel permanent. "Table 9's running low," said Devin, sliding past her with his own tray, not slowing down. Devin had been working the floor for 11 years, and he communicated exclusively in logistics. He was the best coworker she'd ever had. "On it," she said. Table 9 was in the high roller section, the part of the floor that existed behind a low velvet rope that nobody enforced with physical barriers because the enforcement was social. You simply did not walk into that section unless you belonged there or you were carrying something. Sienna belonged there in the second sense. She unhooked the velvet rope without breaking stride, let it fall back into place behind her, and approached the cluster of tables with the unhurried efficiency she had perfected. She smelled him before she saw him. Not cologne, or not just cologne. Something underneath it. The kind of scent that certain men carry without knowing it. Something animal and territorial, like the air pressure changing before a storm. Sienna had grown up with a father who wore power the same way, and she had spent 26 years learning to recognize it and give it a wide berth. The man at table 9 was sitting with his back to the wall. This was the first thing she noticed, the deliberate positioning, the chair angled so that his sightlines covered the entire section, both exits visible, every approaching person visible from 10 feet out. He wasn't paranoid. Paranoia looked nervous, and this man looked like the opposite of nervous. He looked like someone who had arranged the world to his specifications and was now simply watching it perform. He was younger than she expected, mid-30s at most, dark hair, slightly longer than corporate, swept back from a face that was, she registered this clinically, the way you registered weather as information rather than reaction, striking in a way that had nothing to do with conventional prettiness. Sharp jaw, a nose that had been broken once and healed with a slight irregularity that somehow worked, green eyes, pale as sea glass, that moved constantly across the room with the focused efficiency of a man counting threats. Dark suit. No tie. The top button of his shirt undone, which on any other man in this section would have read as casual, but on him read as deliberate restraint, like he was allowing himself exactly that one concession to comfort and nothing more. His hands rested on the table, and she could see the tattoos even from 6 feet away, dark lines disappearing beneath his cuffs. And she cataloged this too because she'd learned that information about men was safety information. There were 3 other men at the table. 2 of them sat slightly apart from him in the body language of subordinates. The third, a silver-haired Italian man in his late 60s, was leaning forward and speaking in a low voice. The green-eyed man was listening with his entire body still. Not bored still, predator still. The kind of stillness that preceded movement. Sienna arrived at the table with her tray and began distributing drinks with the practiced efficiency of long habit. The silver-haired man didn't look up. The 2 subordinates tracked her with the habitual surveillance of men trained to track everything. The green-eyed man watched her hands. "You're McAllen, sir." She set the glass down in front of the silver-haired man. "And you're new," said the green-eyed man. His voice was low, even, carried the faintest trace of something. Not quite Italian, not quite New York, but coastal somewhere, shaped by both. He wasn't looking at her face. He was still watching her hands with the same focused attention he had been giving everything else in the room. 4 months, she said, and placed the next glass without looking at him. Long enough to know the job. Knew enough that you still flinch at the tables. He said it without inflection, without cruelty, the way you stated observable fact. Your left hand. Every time you set a glass down, you hesitate for half a second. You're worried about spilling. She set the last glass down without hesitation and straightened up with her tray. "Is there anything else I can bring you tonight?" she said, directing the question to the table generally in the professional tone she had developed for deflecting difficult men. "Sit down," he said. "I'm working," she said. Something moved in those pale eyes. Not anger, something more like interest. The particular interest of a man who was accustomed to people doing what he said and had just encountered someone who hadn't. "I'm asking you to take a break," he said. "I'll cover whatever they dock you for it." "I don't need you to cover anything," she said, and she said it evenly, without heat, because heat would have been a mistake. She had learned that a long time ago. You didn't give powerful men heat because heat was engagement, and engagement was exactly what they wanted. "Is there anything else you need for the table?" He held her gaze for 3 full seconds. Nobody at the table breathed. "No," he said finally. "Thank you," she said, and turned and walked back through the section with her empty tray and her hammering heart that she did not let reach her face. Devon was waiting at the service station with raised eyebrows. "You know who that is?" he said quietly. "No," she said, loading her tray. "Luca Moretti." The name meant nothing to her. She said so. Devon looked at her with the expression of someone trying to decide how much to say. "Just be careful," he said. "And if he asks you to sit down again, you might consider sitting down." "I have tables to cover," she said, and she did, and she covered them, and she did not look at table 9 again for the next 40 minutes. Ciao. The second time was at the bar. She was placing a drink order with the bartender, Marcus, who moved with the fluid efficiency of a man who had been mixing drinks since before she was born. The casino hummed around her. Somewhere across the floor, someone had hit something significant on the slots, and there was a brief eruption of sound that the ambient noise quickly swallowed. "He sent this," Marcus said, and set a glass on the bar in front of her. She looked at the glass. Water with lemon. Not the usual performative champagne or wine, just water. "Tell him thank you," she said, and did not touch it. Marcus had the dignity not to comment on this. She was halfway back to her section when she heard his voice again, closer this time. "You rejected the water." She turned around. He was standing 4 feet away, and up close he was... She processed this quickly and filed it away. Larger than she had registered from across the room. Not bulky. The height and the controlled quality of his posture, the way he occupied space like he had decided exactly how much of it he wanted and was claiming no more and no less. "I'm not supposed to accept things from guests," she said. "It was water. Rules apply to water." Something flickered at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. The sketch of one. "Sienna," he said. She blinked. She hadn't given him her name. Your badge is on your right side, he said. I read it when you were at the table. I read everything in my immediate environment. It's a habit. Is that a warning or an introduction? She said. This time it was a real smile, brief and surprised, like he hadn't expected it to arrive. Luca, he said. I know your name now, she said. Is there something you need, Mr. Moretti? Have a drink with me. I'm working. Have a drink with me when your shift ends. I go home when my shift ends. The smile was gone now, but the interest was still there, sharper. You're not afraid of me, he said. It was not a question. It was an observation with something underneath it that she couldn't read, some emotion she didn't have enough data to identify. Should I be? She said. He looked at her for a long moment. Most people are, he said simply. Most people's fear is other people's business, she said. Have a good night, Mr. Moretti. She walked away from him again, and she did not shake until she was in the women's staff bathroom with the door locked and cold water running over her wrists, and she breathed through it carefully and evenly. And then she dried her hands and went back to work. He came back the next night, and the night after that. He sat at table 9 both times. He didn't send drinks. He didn't send messages through Devin or Marcus. He sat and he watched the room, and at some point during each night, he found a moment when she was passing and said something brief. A question, an observation, something that was not quite a line, but was not quite conversation either. Testing something. She couldn't tell what. She turned him down twice more. Once gently, once with less gentleness. The 5th time she was walking toward the service exit at the end of her shift with her feet aching and her lower back tight from 6 hours of carrying trays, and he fell into step beside her with the unhurried ease of a man accustomed to walking into spaces uninvited. I'd like to buy you breakfast, he said. It's 3 a.m., she said without slowing. There are places open at 3 a.m. I know there are. I'm not going to them. Why? He said. And there was something genuine in it. Not frustration, but actual curiosity, the kind she didn't hear often from men who looked like him. She stopped walking, turned to face him. Because, she said, and she kept her voice level and direct, I know what you are. Not the specifics. I don't know your business or your family or whatever it is you have going on, but I know the shape of it, and I know what happens to women who have breakfast with men who have that shape. And I like my life the way it is. It's not an exciting life, it's mine. He stood there looking at her. Your life is a double shift and a 40-minute bus ride, he said, and he said it without contempt, which was the strange part. Yes, she said, and it's mine. He was quiet for a moment, then, that's the most honest thing anyone has said to me in about 2 years. Then you've been spending time with the wrong people, she said. Good night, Mr. Moretti. She pushed through the exit door and the cool Vegas night hit her face, and she walked the 2 blocks to the bus stop and sat on the plastic bench and stared at the neon reflections on the pavement until the bus arrived, and she did not let herself think about the look on his face when she'd walked away. She did not let herself think about it at all. The night everything collapsed started ordinarily. Sienna had been at work for 4 hours when Devin found her at the service station and said, quietly and without ceremony, that some of the high rollers were celebrating something significant, a deal closed, a contract signed, something, and that the floor manager had approved complimentary service, including top-shelf bottles, and that table 9 was the center of the celebration. I can take another section, she said immediately. Ramirez called out sick, Devin said. It's you or it's Marcus, and Marcus is slammed at the bar. She pulled her tray straight and went. The table was different that night. The silver-haired Italian man was there again, and beside him 2 men she hadn't seen before, one older, with the weathered face of someone who had lived hard and survived it, and one roughly her age, dark-eyed and watchful, wearing a suit that cost more than her rent. There were other people at the surrounding tables, all clearly part of the same orbit. The air had changed, something celebratory on the surface, something careful underneath it. Luca looked the same as he always did, which was to say, he looked like a man who had decided some years back exactly what he was and had committed to it entirely. Dark suit, tattooed hands, those pale green eyes that moved and moved and moved. He didn't say anything when she arrived. She poured drinks with her usual efficiency. The silver-haired man, she had heard one of the others call him Don Ricci, raised his glass with a toast in Italian that she didn't catch. Everyone drank. The mood was expansive, territorial, the specific warmth of powerful men who had gotten what they wanted. "You should celebrate with us," said the dark-eyed young man, and he said it to her in the tone of someone accustomed to service staff existing as props in their evening. "I'm working," she said. The same words, the same tone. "She works constantly," Luca said, and the dark-eyed man looked at him and went quiet. "It's her primary characteristic." "I have others," she said evenly, gathering empty glasses. "I know," Luca said. "You're also stubborn, direct, and profoundly unimpressed by expensive things." Don Ricci was watching this exchange with an expression she couldn't read, something sharp and assessing beneath the social warmth. "Your wife?" he said to Luca, in accented English, with a smile that was half genuine and half something else. "No," Luca said. "You should make her your wife," Don Ricci said, laughing now, expansive with whatever they were celebrating. "A woman who isn't afraid of you, Luca. That's worth more than anything." The table laughed. Sienna picked up the last glass, kept her face neutral, and prepared to leave. "One drink," Luca said quietly. "Not a request. Not quite. Something in between. Off the clock. Tonight." She looked at him. "My shift ends at 2, she said. "I know," he said. Something about tonight was different. She couldn't locate it exactly. The exhaustion of the week, the raw honesty she'd offered him 5 days ago that he hadn't used against her the way she'd expected. The strange gentleness beneath the danger that she kept catching glimpses of and should have been smart enough to stop looking for. She was tired. She was very, very tired. And he was looking at her like she was the only real thing in the room. "One drink," she said. Chad. This was what she remembered. The casino bar after 2 a.m., the specific light of it. A bartender she didn't know who poured things she didn't order. Luca sitting across from her, closer than he'd ever been. And the surprise of him. The humor she hadn't expected, dry and self-aware, nothing like the performed dominance of the casino floor. He talked about his childhood in San Francisco in fragments. Not stories exactly. Impressions. A bay that was cold even in summer. A kitchen that smelled like his grandmother's cooking. A father who had taught him chess before he'd taught him anything else. She talked about her studio, the kids she taught. The way contemporary dance felt like the only honest language she'd ever found. She did not remember the third drink. She did not remember the fourth. She remembered laughing. She remembered the way he looked at her. Not like a conquest, not like something to be obtained, but like something that surprised him, again and again, a puzzle he hadn't expected to find interesting. She remembered thinking, under different circumstances, this would be a person I could... She didn't remember the rest. Well, she woke up to white light and the sound of someone's phone. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar. The sheets beneath her were expensive, the specific high thread count softness of hotel linen. She was still dressed. She registered this immediately. Her casino uniform rumpled but intact. Her shoes were on the floor beside the bed, neatly paired, and this detail confused her because she didn't remember taking them off. The phone wouldn't stop. She turned her head. Luca Moretti was sitting on the edge of the bed with his back to her and his phone to his ear, and his posture had lost the controlled ease of the casino floor. He was rigid, his free hand pressed flat against his knee, his voice when he spoke low enough that she caught only fragments. Breach. Already public. How many? And then something in Italian, fast and clipped. "What happened?" she said. He turned. His face in the morning light was... She had not seen this expression on him before. Not fear. Something close to it and further from it simultaneously. The expression of a man confronting a situation that was outside his control and finding that intolerable. "Do you remember last night?" he said. "Some of it," she said carefully. "The bar. Drinks. I don't..." She stopped. There was something on her left hand. She raised it. "What is this?" It was a ring. Simple gold band. The kind you bought fast. "We got married," he said. "Apparently." The silence that followed was total. "That's not..." she started. "Possible," he said. "I know, but the photos are already online." He turned the phone screen toward her. The headline was visible from across the room. She didn't need to read it to understand the photo beneath it. The two of them, clearly, beneath neon lights, her laughing and him looking at her the way he'd looked at her across the bar, and an officiant in an Elvis costume and hands joined and a document. Her heart did something terrible inside her chest. "I was drugged," he said. "I know I was drugged. My tolerance is high enough that 2 drinks don't—" He stopped, controlled himself. Someone did this deliberately. Someone arranged this. "Who?" she said. "I don't know yet." He looked at her. "But I will." She looked at the ring on her hand. She looked at the headlines scrolling across his phone screen. She thought about the studio, the kids, the bus ride home, the landlord who hadn't fixed the HVAC. Her life that was small and hers. "I want to go home," she said. "I know," he said. "That's not a—" She stopped, breathed. "Can I go home?" Something moved across his face. "You're not a prisoner," he said, and the way he said it, quiet, careful, like he needed her to believe it, told her that he understood exactly what she was really asking. "Okay," she said. She stood up. Her head ached. She found her shoes and put them on and straightened her uniform and picked up her bag from the floor where it had fallen, and she walked to the door and she stopped with her hand on the handle. "Mr. Moretti," she said. "Luca," he said behind her. "Luca." She kept her eyes on the door. "If you find out who did this, I want to know." "You will," he said. She opened the door. The hallway of the hotel was empty and bright and utterly impersonal, the long corridor of doors stretching away in both directions, the same recycled air as the casino floor, the same manufactured world. She walked down it with the gold band on her finger and the headlines on her phone screen and the specific dread of knowing that whatever her life had been this morning, it was something different now. The bus home took 47 minutes. She sat in the back and watched Vegas slide past the windows. The neon giving way to regular streets, regular buildings, the version of the city that didn't make the postcards. Her phone had 14 missed calls, 3 from numbers she didn't recognize, 1 from her sister in Phoenix, who had apparently seen the headlines already, 1 from her studio partner, Maya, whose voicemail consisted entirely of a long silence followed by "Sienna, call me." She did not call anyone. She sat in her apartment with Marco the cat on her lap and her laptop open and read everything that had been written about her in the 6 hours since she had apparently gotten married, and it was a lot. It was more than a lot. It was the specific annihilating attention of the internet converging on a private person, and it described her as variously a gold digger, a con artist, a naive girl, a genius operator, and several things worse than any of these. It described Luca Moretti in terms that made her understand with full clarity why Devin had looked at her that way. Organized crime, International Investment Corporation as front, West Coast operations. Several federal investigations opened and closed over a decade, nothing proven. A name known in private rooms by people who understood what it meant. She closed the laptop. She sat there for a long time. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. Then she played the voicemail and heard Luca Moretti's voice, low and direct, no preamble. "My security team has confirmed we were both drugged before the ceremony. I have footage. I have a name for the substance. It's a compound that causes memory gaps and heightened suggestibility. Combined with alcohol, it's—" A pause. "I need to speak with you in person. Not about the marriage, about your safety. The people who arranged this are not finished." Another pause. "You can tell me no. I've learned you're comfortable with that." The faintest edge of something that wasn't quite humor. "But I'd prefer you said yes." She played the message again. Then she sat back and stared at the ceiling and thought about a man with pale green eyes and tattoos under his cuffs who had looked at her like she was the most honest thing he'd encountered in years, and who had just been honest with her in return, and who was tangled up now in whatever this was. Yeah. Both of them tangled up in it, she realized, neither of them having chosen it. She thought about what he'd said in the hallway of the studio one late night, when she'd mentioned the HVAC to Devin's cousin who did maintenance. "I'd prefer you said yes." She thought about the ring, still on her finger because she hadn't taken it off and she wasn't sure yet why. She picked up her phone. He answered on the first ring. "Tell me about the people who arranged this," she said. "All of it." A pause. Then, "How soon can you be ready?" "I'm already ready," she said. The silence between them was brief, and it held something in it. Not warmth exactly, not yet, but the specific quality of two people who have just made a decision that neither of them fully understands, and both of them already know they cannot take back. "A car will be there in 20 minutes, he said. "I'll be outside," she said. She hung up. Marco jumped off her lap and went to sit in his bowl to make a point about the quality of service in this household. Sienna looked at the ring on her hand. Plain gold, bought in a chapel at some point between midnight and 3 a.m. by two people who hadn't known what they were doing. She thought, whoever arranged this wanted Luca Moretti destabilized, wanted him publicly humiliated, wanted him vulnerable. She thought, and they used me to do it. That was the part that settled into her chest like something cold and hard. Not fear. Something more specific than fear. The focused anger of a woman who has discovered she was made into a tool without her knowledge, and has decided, quietly and entirely, that this is not something she is going to accept. She stood up. She went to her bathroom and washed her face and put on clothes that were not a casino uniform, and she was standing on the sidewalk outside her building exactly 17 minutes later when a black car with tinted windows pulled to a silent stop at the curb. The driver did not say anything when she got in. The city moved past the windows. The Nevada desert opened out beyond the last streets, and the car moved through it, and ahead of her, somewhere in San Francisco, was a man surrounded by enemies and armed guards, and the ruins of a night neither of them remembered, who had just told her the truth and asked her to come. She didn't know what she was walking into. She knew she was walking into it anyway. The car reached the highway. The speedometer climbed. Behind them, Las Vegas glittered in the rearview mirror, 10,000 lights in the dark, indifferent and eternal, already moving on to the next story. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Not Luca's, a different one. "Enjoy the honeymoon, Mrs. Moretti. It won't last long." She stared at the message. Then she screenshot it, marked the number, and put the phone face down on the seat beside her. Her jaw was set. Her hands in her lap were steady. Whoever had done this thought they had made her a victim. They had made a mistake. The car smelled like leather and something underneath it, gun oil, maybe, or the specific chemical neutrality of spaces that got cleaned too thoroughly, too often. Sienna sat in the back with her hands in her lap and watched the Nevada desert dissolve into highway and tried to think clearly about what she was doing. She was getting into a car sent by a man she'd met 4 days ago, a man whose name, according to 3 separate news outlets she'd read in the last 2 hours, was associated with wire fraud, extortion, the disappearance of a federal witness in 2019, and the management of criminal operations spanning 6 western states. A man who had, apparently, married her while both of them were chemically incapacitated and couldn't remember any of it. She was doing this voluntarily. Marco was going to run out of food by Thursday. The text message glowed on her phone screen when she picked it up again. "Enjoy the honeymoon, Mrs. Moretti. It won't last long." She read it 3 times, trying to extract information from the syntax, the word choice, the timing. Whoever sent it had known she was already in the car, had known the number to reach her on, had known enough to know Luca had called her and she had said yes, which meant someone was watching. She put the phone down and looked out the window and said nothing to the driver, who was a large man with a shaved head and a neck tattoo partially visible above his collar, and who had said exactly 4 words since she'd gotten in. "Miss Vale. Good evening." He drove with the focused economy of someone whose job was driving and who took it seriously. They crossed into California as the sky began turning colors in the rearview mirror. The specific bruised palette of desert dawn, purple bleeding into orange, bleeding into the pale flat blue of a day that was going to be hot. Sienna had been awake for approximately 22 hours. She was aware of this the way you became aware of structural damage. Not dramatically, just as information about load-bearing capacity. She did not sleep. She watched the road and thought about what she knew and what she didn't, and tried to build something useful out of the difference. The estate was not what she expected, which was stupid because she hadn't known what to expect. She had constructed some vague image from movies and headlines, something ostentatious, something designed to announce its own importance. What she found instead was a house that sat on a cliff above the San Francisco Bay, with the quiet confidence of something that didn't need to announce anything. Stone and glass, horizontal lines, old trees that had been there before the house and would probably be there after. The kind of architecture that said, "I don't need your attention, I already have everything." The gate opened before the car reached it. Inside there were guards. She counted 4 visible ones on the approach, which meant more she couldn't see. And she cataloged this without comment because it was information, and information was the only asset she currently had. The driveway was long and curved and ended in a motor court where 2 other black cars were already parked with the particular stillness of vehicles on standby. Luca was waiting at the front door. He had changed. Dark trousers, a gray shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbows, the tattoos on his forearms fully visible now in the morning light. He looked like he hadn't slept. He looked like he was accustomed to not sleeping and had made his peace with it sometime in the past decade. He watched her get out of the car with an expression she was beginning to recognize. That focused, assessing stillness, reading her the way he read every room he walked into. She walked toward him and did not look at the guards and did not slow down. "You made it," he said. "I said I would," she said. He held the door open. She walked through it into a house that smelled like coffee and something underneath it, some permanent quality of a space lived in by a specific person for a long time. She couldn't name it exactly, only register it. The interior was spare, she noticed. Less furniture than the square footage justified. Clean lines. A few paintings that looked real rather than decorative. Books on actual shelves rather than arranged for effect. A man was standing in the hallway. He was about 50, compact, with close-cropped silver hair and the watchful economy of movement that she was beginning to associate with men in Luca's orbit. He was looking at her with an expression that was professional neutral on the surface and something considerably less neutral underneath. "Sienna, this is Renzo," Luca said. "He runs security." "Miss Vale," Renzo said. "We need to talk about the text message," she said, and she said it to Luca, not to Renzo, because she had decided in the car that she was going to engage with this directly and not perform the role of confused civilian waiting to be managed. Something shifted in Luca's expression. "You got one." "An hour ago. Unknown number. Watching from close enough to know I was already in the car." Renzo's hand was already out. She gave him the phone. He looked at the screen with the focused attention of a man who processed information professionally and did not visibly react to any of it, which told her, actually, quite a lot. "Coffee," Luca said. It wasn't a question. He walked toward the back of the house and she followed because the alternative was standing in the hallway and she needed to be in whatever room the information was in. The kitchen was large and faced the bay. The water was silver in the early morning light, the bridge visible in the middle distance, and for a single disoriented second, the view was so beautiful that it cut through everything else, and she just stood there looking at it. "Sit down," Luca said, not unkindly. She sat at the kitchen island. He poured 2 cups of coffee without asking how she took it, which she was about to comment on, and then he set a small pitcher of cream on the island beside hers, which meant he'd noticed something, she wasn't sure what, and she poured the cream without acknowledging this. "Tell me what you remember," he said. He was standing across the island from her, both hands around his own cup, looking at her with that direct attention. "I remember the bar. Our conversation. The 3rd drink I didn't order arriving. After that," she stopped. "Fragments. Laughing. Motion. Like walking somewhere. Then nothing until your hotel room this morning." "Same sequence for me," he said. "My security team pulled the bartender's shift log. Someone on staff received a cash payment 3 days ago from an account we've traced to a shell company in Delaware. The compound used—" He paused, choosing the word. "It's not recreational, it's specialized, medical grade. The kind of thing that requires contacts to obtain." "So this wasn't opportunistic," she said. "No. Someone planned this specifically." "Yes." She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "Why?" He set his cup down, looked at her steadily. "I was in the middle of negotiating an alliance with an organization out of New York. Old family, the Calabrese. They value presentation, family stability, the image of a man who has his house in order. A beat." A mafia boss who gets drunk married to a casino waitress and ends up on TMZ is not a man with his house in order. She absorbed this. So, someone wanted to destabilize the alliance. Yes. And they used me as the method. Yes. She looked at him. You could have led with that. I'm leading with it now. I mean before. The 5 times you came to the casino. Her voice was even. Were any of those... Were you using me then? The question landed in the kitchen and sat there. His jaw tightened. No, he said. How do I know that? You don't, he said. You have my word. I understand that's not much. It's not nothing, she said, and she meant it, and she hated that she meant it, and she moved on. What happens now? Renzo came in then, her phone in his hand, and he looked at Luca and there was a brief exchange of something. Not words, just the specific compressed communication of 2 men who had worked together long enough to do it without speaking. Something in it made the skin on the back of her neck tighten. The number, Renzo said. It's a burner. But the cell tower triangulation puts the sender approximately 4 blocks from this location when the message was sent. The kitchen went very quiet. They already knew she was coming here, Luca said. They knew before the car arrived, Renzo said. Sienna put her coffee cup down. Your house has a leak. Both men looked at her. Someone in your organization told them I was on my way, she said. That's not a difficult conclusion. Luca's face had done something complicated. She watched it happen, the controlled collapse of something, the fury that moved across him like weather and then went somewhere internal and got locked down. He turned and walked to the window and stood with his back to them, looking at the bay for approximately 4 seconds. And in those 4 seconds, she had the acute sense of being in the room with something extremely dangerous that was currently choosing not to be dangerous. And the choosing was the frightening part. Get me Caruso and Torres, he said to Renzo. Quiet. Absolutely level. Now? Renzo said. Now, Luca said. Renzo left. Sienna sat at the island with her coffee and the view of the bay and the knowledge that she was inside a situation that was considerably more intricate and dangerous than she had understood at 4 a.m. when she'd said yes on the phone. You should eat something, Luca said, still facing the window. I'm fine. You've been awake for... He checked his watch. 24 hours. You need to eat. You have a leak in your organization, and you're telling me to eat breakfast. He turned from the window. The leak has been in my organization for at least 3 days, and I can't fix it in the next 10 minutes, he said. Eating breakfast? I can do something about. She stared at him. He opened the refrigerator, and she watched Luca Moretti, the most feared organized crime boss on the West Coast, according to 4 separate news outlets, pull out eggs and butter with the domestic competence of a man who had cooked for himself before and take a pan from the cabinet above the stove. You cook, she said. I live alone, he said. The alternative was starving. She didn't say anything to this. She watched him crack eggs with one hand, not performatively, just efficiently, the way you did things when you'd done them 10,000 times. And she was aware of how bizarre this was, the totality of this. And she was also aware that she was, in fact, very hungry. They ate. They didn't talk much. The food was good, simple, properly seasoned, nothing elaborate. She noted this the way she noted the books and the spare furniture. Data, all of it, pieces of a picture she was assembling without knowing yet what it was supposed to look like. Renzo came back with 2 men. Caruso was late 40s, heavy through the shoulders, with the specific stillness of a man who had spent considerable time in professional proximity to violence. Torres was younger, early 30s, lean and dark-eyed, with a restless quality that the others didn't have. Both of them looked at Sienna when they came in with expressions of controlled assessment, and she looked back at both of them and didn't look away. Luca didn't look up from his coffee. Someone made contact with Sienna's phone 60 minutes after she left Vegas. They knew she was in the car. They knew she was coming here. Neither man said anything. Tell me something that makes me believe it wasn't one of you, Luca said, still not looking up. Torres opened his mouth. Caruso put a hand out, not touching him, just a gesture, and Torres closed it. It wasn't us, Caruso said. Evidence, Luca said. I've been in this house since 11 p.m. last night, Caruso said. Renzo can confirm. Torres was with the overnight team on the perimeter, 4 witnesses. A pause. But Dominic had vehicle detail last night. He left the property at 1 a.m. with authorization to cover the airport run. Luca was very still. The airport run was canceled, he said. Yes, Caruso said. And Dominic hasn't returned, Caruso said. The kitchen held the weight of this. Sienna looked at Luca. His face was the particular blankness of a man absorbing information and converting it into calculation rather than emotion, and she understood that this was a skill, that it had been built over time, that underneath it something was happening that was not blank at all. Find him, Luca said. Already working on it, Renzo said. And in the meantime, Luca turned to Sienna and his voice changed, not softer, but different, directed with an attention that was entirely personal. You can't go back to Vegas. She felt the words hit her solar plexus. I have a life there, she said. I know. I have a studio, students, classes tomorrow. The people who sent that message know where you live, he said. They know your name, your job, your address. They used you to get to me, which means you are now a resource they may use again, or a liability they may decide to remove. She knew he was right. She had known it in the back of the car. She had known it when the text arrived. She had known it the way you knew things you weren't ready to act on yet. And he was asking her to act on it now, and the reality of it was, for how long, she said, until the situation is resolved. And how long does that take? I don't know yet. She pushed back from the island, walked to the window. The bay was fully lit now, the water shifting from silver to green in the morning sun. A container ship was moving through the channel with the slow gravity of something enormous that had nowhere to be in a hurry. What does resolved mean? She said. What's the actual situation? Luca came to stand beside her. Not close, the appropriate distance of a conversation, not a relationship. The alliance with the Calabrese is still possible, he said. The marriage, accidental as it was, could actually work in my favor if I manage it correctly. A sudden annulment reads as scandal. A deliberate marriage reads as a choice. She turned to look at him. You want to use it, she said. I want to stabilize the damage, he said. Which means, yes. I'm asking you to stay married, publicly, for 1 month. Attend 2 events with me. Be present at this house. At the end of the month, we proceed with a quiet, amicable separation, and I pay you enough to cheat. How much? She said. He told her. She heard the number and her mind did something complicated with it. What it would mean for the studio, for the lease, for the HVAC that had been broken for 3 weeks, for the salary she paid Maya, for the 10-year-olds who couldn't afford the fee increase that had been coming for 6 months. What it would mean to not take the 3 a.m. bus home anymore. What it would mean to have, actually, a choice. She hated that she was thinking about it. 1 month, she said. 1 month. I want conditions. Something moved through his expression. Respect, she thought, or the first acknowledgement of it. Name them. I keep teaching. I go to the studio twice a week. You provide whatever transportation and security you think is necessary. I don't argue about it, but I go. Agreed. I have my own room, my own space. This is a professional arrangement, and it stays professional. Agreed. If at any point I decide this is not safe, not for me, not for the kids at my studio, not for anyone connected to me, I walk. No negotiation. He held her gaze. Agreed, he said, and he said it without hesitation, which she noticed. She turned back to the window. I need to call Maya, she said. My partner at the studio. She needs to know I won't be back for... She stopped. I don't know how to explain this. You don't have to explain it. You can tell her you're dealing with a personal situation. She's going to see the headlines. She's probably already seen the headlines. Sienna closed her eyes briefly. Yeah, she said. She has. Her phone, retrieved from Renzo, had 47 notifications on it. She didn't look at them. She called Maya, and Maya answered on the first ring, and the first thing Maya said was, Are you safe? Yes, Sienna said. Are you sure? Because there are... I'm sure. I'm safe. I need you to cover classes for a few weeks. I'll explain everything I can when I can. A long pause. Sienna, the man you married, you know what the papers are saying. I know what the papers are saying. Do you need me to come? No, stay. Keep the studio running. I'll be in touch. She paused. Maya, the HVAC. I'm going to get you the money to fix it properly. This week. Another pause. What is happening to you? Maya said softly. Not a question. I'm handling something, Sienna said. I'm okay. She hung up and stood by the window for another moment, and then she turned to face the room. Luca, Renzo, the two men she didn't fully trust yet, the house that was not hers, the situation she had walked into voluntarily with her eyes open and was only now understanding the full dimensions of. All right, she said. Tell me everything. Not the version you'd tell a civilian, the real version. He told her in the study, a room that was walls of books and one window and a large desk and two chairs that were used, genuinely worn, the leather creased with years of use. He sat behind the desk and she sat across from it, and he talked for 40 minutes without performing anything, without managing her, just telling her the mechanics of what he was dealing with. The Moretti family had operated on the West Coast for 3 generations. Luca had inherited leadership at 29 after his father's death, which he described in 2 sentences and moved past. The current organization ran through a legitimate investment corporation, real estate, hospitality, tech infrastructure, and through the layers underneath it that he did not detail precisely and she did not ask him to. The Calabrese alliance, if completed, would stabilize a specific territorial arrangement that had been contested for 8 years and had cost, he said without elaboration, quite a lot. The drugged wedding had created a rupture in the negotiations. Don Ricci, the silver-haired man from Table 9, was conservative, old school. The photos had embarrassed him by association. Can you repair it? She said. If I present the marriage as deliberate rather than scandal, yes. If I present you as a partner rather than a liability, possibly. He paused. Don Ricci liked you. She thought about the old man's expression across the table. A woman who isn't afraid of you, Luca. That's worth more than anything. He was testing me, she said. Everything is a test, Luca said. In this world, everything. Including me being here right now. Yes, he said, including that. She appreciated the honesty. She told him so. I find lying inefficient, he said. It requires maintenance. That's either a very practical worldview or a very cynical one. In my experience, those are the same thing, he said, and then something moved across his face, a flash of something self-aware and dry, the same quality she'd caught in fragments during those 5 nights in the casino, the humor that didn't advertise itself. It was there, and then it was gone. She looked at him across the desk. There's something you haven't told me, she said. He was quiet for a moment. Then, the compound they used, the specialized one, to source it and administer it at that scale, in that setting, you need inside knowledge of the Moretti operation, the specific events of that night, who would be where, when, what security protocols were active. He paused. Dominic had all of that information. The missing man, she said. Yes. And the person who paid him, the shell company in Delaware. We're tracing it, Luca said. It will lead somewhere. It will take time. He looked at her directly. When I know who gave the order, I'll tell you. She believed him. That was the part that unsettled her. Not any of the rest of it, not the guards or the headlines or the text message or the number. He told her that was enough to change her entire life. But the simple fact that she believed him. A man she had known for 5 days, 3 of which she'd spent refusing to acknowledge he existed, was sitting across a desk from her in a house above the San Francisco Bay, telling her things that could get her killed, and she believed him. She needed to be more careful than this. She was aware of that. She filed it. They gave her a room on the 2nd floor. It faced east, which meant morning light and a view of the garden and the bay beyond it. It had its own bathroom and a closet with nothing in it, and a bed that was made with clean linens. Renzo told her that someone would bring clothes and necessities from Vegas within 24 hours, and she nodded and thanked him, and he left. She stood at the window and looked at the garden. There was a man walking the perimeter fence. She could see him through the trees, steady and unhurried. Another one at the gate. The security had a quality of permanence about it, like it had always been here and always would be, like the house itself had grown it the way it had grown the old trees. She sat on the edge of the bed. She thought, 1 month, She thought studio fixed, kids keep dancing, Maya keeps her salary. 1 month, she thought. The man at the desk, who said lying was inefficient, who looked at her like she was a puzzle he hadn't expected to find interesting, who cooked eggs with one hand and told her things he didn't have to tell her. She put her face in her hands and breathed. More careful, she told herself. Be more careful than this. Her phone buzzed. She expected another unknown number, expected another threat, another message designed to destabilize. Instead, she looked at the screen and found a text from Luca, from an actual saved contact. He'd apparently programmed his number into her phone at some point without mentioning it. And it said, "There's a library on the first floor, east side. Third shelf from the window has some decent fiction if you can't sleep." She stared at the message for a long time. Then she put the phone face down on the mattress and lay back and looked at the ceiling. She did not go to the library. She also did not sleep. 2 days passed. They found a rhythm, the way people found rhythms when they had no choice. Meals at more or less regular hours. The strange domestic choreography of two people sharing space without having agreed on the specific terms of sharing. Luca worked from the study for most of the day, which she gathered meant phone calls and meetings, and whatever it was that managing both a legitimate corporation and the other thing required. She explored the house, she was not told not to, and found the library, which was better than decent, and a room on the ground floor with a wide open space that had been used for something and was now empty. And she pushed the furniture to the walls and taught herself a piece she'd been working on in her head for 3 months. Just her in the empty room and the bay through the window. She was midway through it the second afternoon when she looked up and Luca was in the doorway. She stopped. "Keep going," he said. "I'm done," she said, which was not true, and from his expression he knew it was not true, but he didn't push it. "Don Ricci wants to meet," he said. "Day after tomorrow, dinner at his home in Pacific Heights. Formal setting, 12 guests. I need you there as my wife." "All right," she said. "He'll ask you questions. Some of them won't be subtle. I can handle questions. These questions come attached to men who are deciding whether you're an asset or a complication," he said. "The distinction matters in ways that are," he paused, "more concrete than you might prefer." She looked at him steadily. "Meaning, if they decide I'm a complication, they would tell me so," he said, "and I would tell them that their assessment was incorrect. But it's better if they arrive at the right conclusion themselves. So you need me to perform," she said. Something moved in his face. "I need you to be yourself," he said. "Don Ricci liked you specifically because you don't perform. I'm not asking you to pretend anything. I'm asking you to—" He stopped. "To be comfortable," she said. "Yes." "In a room full of mafia bosses." "Yes." She looked at him for a moment. "What do your wives usually do in these situations?" "I've never had a wife before," he said. She absorbed this. "Okay," she said. "I'll be there." He nodded, started to turn away. "Luca," she said. He turned back. "The person who arranged this," she said. "Do you have a name yet?" His jaw tightened. "A direction," he said. "Not a name." "When you have a name," she said, "I want to be in the room." He looked at her. Something passed across his face that was not the usual controlled assessment. Something raw, something that arrived and stayed for a moment before he put it back wherever he kept those things. "All right," he said. He left. She stood in the empty room with the bay through the window and her heartbeat doing something she didn't examine too closely, and she told herself, 1 month, keep your eyes open, don't lose yourself in this. That night, Renzo came to the kitchen where she was drinking tea at 11 p.m. because she still couldn't sleep. He stood in the doorway with an expression that was careful and direct, and told her, without preamble, "They found Dominic." "And?" she said. Renzo's face did the specific thing that faces did when the information was the worst kind. "He's dead," he said. "Been dead since approximately 2 a.m. the night of the wedding." A pause. "Which means whoever paid him didn't trust him to stay silent." She set her tea down. "Which means whoever arranged all of this," she said slowly, "was not playing a game. They were prepared to kill their own operative." "Yes," Renzo said, "and they've been watching this house." "Yes." "And Luca?" "He's been told," Renzo said. "He asked me to tell you as well." He paused, something shifting in his expression. Not warmth exactly, but the approximation of it from a man not built for warmth. He said you'd want to know, that you'd be insulted if he waited until morning. She sat with this for a moment. He was right, she said. Renzo left. She sat at the kitchen island in the dark house above the dark bay with a dead man's silence spreading outward from the information and covering everything. And she understood, fully, finally, in her bones rather than just her head, that there was no version of this where she could keep one foot out the door. Whoever was behind this had already decided she was part of it. She had not chosen that. But she was in it now, all the way in, and there was exactly one door in front of her, and it only opened forward. She picked up her tea. She drank it cold. Somewhere in the house, behind the study door, a light was still on. The dinner at Don Ricci's house was on a Thursday. Sienna spent Wednesday morning in the empty room on the ground floor, moving through combinations she had taught herself at 17 in a studio in Phoenix with no air conditioning and one working mirror. Not performing, not preparing, just moving, because movement was the only thing that reliably cleared her head, that took the noise of a situation and reduced it to breath and weight and the specific geometry of a body in space. She had been doing this since she was 7 years old, and it had not failed her yet. She worked through the same piece she'd been building in her head. Contemporary, floor-heavy. The kind of choreography that required you to trust your own falling, to commit to going down because you knew you could get back up. She fell and recovered. Fell and recovered. The bay light moved across the floor, and the guards changed shift outside the window, and somewhere deeper in the house, Luca's voice moved through a phone call in Italian, fragments reaching her without meaning. She stopped when her legs told her to stop. She stood at the window breathing hard and looked at the water and thought about Dominic. Dead since 2 a.m. the night of the wedding, killed by the people who had hired him because they hadn't trusted him to stay bought. She thought about what that meant. To arrange a setup that elaborate at that level of precision, and then eliminate your own operative before the sun came up. That wasn't a rival with a grievance. That was someone who thought in systems, someone who had planned not just the action, but the cleanup, and had done both without hesitation. She dried her face with the hem of her shirt and went to find Luca. He was in the study with Renzo and a third man she had not met yet, late 40s, slight, with the particular stillness of someone whose value was in what he knew rather than what he could do physically. He was introduced as Marco. She noted the name with private amusement, and described by Renzo as an analyst, which she understood to mean whatever it needed to mean in this context. There was a laptop open on the desk, a corporate filing on the screen, Delaware registration, layers of subsidiary names arranged in a hierarchy that was designed to be unreadable. Luca looked up when she came in, and something in his posture shifted. Not dramatically, just the small recalibration of a man who had been inside a problem, and was now briefly outside it. "The shell company," she said. "Traced through 4 layers," Marco said. "We're at the 5th. The capital structure leads back to a holding company registered in the Cayman Islands in 2019. The beneficial owner is obscured through nominee structures, but the operational address on the original filing," he turned the laptop toward her, "is a property management company in San Jose." "Who owns the property management company?" she said. Marco looked at Luca. "A man named Adrian Vescari," Luca said. He said it flatly, with the specific neutrality of someone controlling their voice carefully. "He runs distribution operations out of the Bay Area. Mid-level. Has been mid-level for 12 years, which in this business is either a sign of contentment or a sign of patience." "Which is it?" she said. "Patience," Luca said. "He's been building towards something for a long time, moving slowly enough not to be noticed." A pause. "I made the mistake of not noticing." She looked at him. There was something in the admission, the directness of it, the lack of self-protective deflection, that landed differently than she expected. She filed it. "So Viscari arranged the wedding," she said, "paid Dominic to facilitate the drugging, managed the logistics, killed Dominic afterward to close the thread." "Yes," Luca said, "and his goal is to destabilize the Calabrese alliance and take whatever fills the vacuum." "Yes." "Does he know you know?" The 3 men exchanged a look. "Probably not yet," Renzo said. The Delaware Trace took resources he wouldn't expect us to have access to this quickly. So you have a window, she said. A small one, Luca said. She nodded slowly. The dinner tomorrow. Don Ricci knows about Viscari? Ricci knows Viscari exists. He doesn't know the extent of what he's done. Luca stood up from behind the desk. A controlled unfolding, the kind of movement that reminded her, constantly, that beneath the tailored clothes and the measured voice, there was something physical and alert that did not switch off. Tomorrow night is also about demonstrating stability. To Ricci and the other families present, this marriage needs to read as intentional, as strength, not as what it was, she said. Yes. She looked at the laptop screen, the corporate hierarchy with its empty nominee names and its offshore addresses. Does Viscari know I exist? She said. Before the wedding, I mean. Was I specifically selected or was I just available? The pause before Luca answered was very brief and told her quite a lot. You were selected, he said. She had suspected this. The knowledge settled into her chest differently than suspicion had. Heavier, more specific. Why me? You worked the high roller section 4 nights a week. You had visible interactions with me over 5 days. You were documented, shift records, employee files, which made you credible as a romantic interest. He said it clinically, the way he said difficult things, without dressing them. And you have no family connections in this city. No one who would... He stopped. No one who would cause trouble if something happened to me, she said. Yes, he said. The room was quiet. She was aware of Renzo watching her and Marco watching the laptop screen with the careful attention of a man who had decided to be elsewhere in the room mentally. And she was aware of Luca watching her with the expression he got when he had said something true and was waiting to see what she did with it. All right, she said. Then I'll be at the dinner. Ochit. Don Ricci's house in Pacific Heights was the kind of property that didn't appear in real estate listings. It moved between owners through lawyers and quiet agreements, its value never publicly established. It sat behind mature hedges on a corner lot with a view of the bay and the bridge and the city below it, and inside it smelled like old money and good food, and the specific formality of rooms used for significant conversations. There were 12 guests. Sienna had been told there would be 12 guests. What she had not been told, or had not processed until she was standing in the marble entry hall with Luca's hand at the small of her back and the weight of 12 pairs of eyes turning toward them, was what 12 people from this specific world looked like in a single room. The gravity of it. The specific attention of people accustomed to assessing everyone who entered a room as either useful or dangerous, and doing it within seconds, and being correct. She wore black. Simple. The kind of dress that worked because it didn't try. She had borrowed it from a bag of clothes Renzo had brought from Vegas, and she had stood in front of the mirror in her room for 3 minutes deciding whether she looked like herself and concluded that she did, which was the only thing that mattered. Luca, beside her, wore a dark suit and looked exactly like himself, which was to say he looked like the most dangerous person in any room he entered, and he was so accustomed to this that he simply walked through it. Don Ricci came forward. Silver-haired, expansive, with the warmth of a man who had learned that warmth was useful and had deployed it so long it had become genuine. He took Sienna's hand and held it briefly and looked at her with those sharp, assessing eyes above the social smile. Mrs. Moretti, he said. Welcome. Thank you for having us, she said. He studied her for a moment. You're nervous, he said softly, meant only for her. I'm a dance teacher from Vegas at a dinner party in Pacific Heights, she said. I'm appropriately nervous. He laughed, a real one, the kind that arrived at the eyes. I like this woman, he said to Luca, who was standing just behind her right shoulder. I know, Luca said. The dinner lasted 3 hours. She had been at job interviews less demanding than the table conversation. The questions came obliquely, about her background, her work, how she and Luca had met, phrased as social interest but structured as assessment. An older woman across the table, introduced as Sophia, attached to a man named Ferrante, who said almost nothing and watched everything, asked Sienna about the studio with the focused attention of someone who had been briefed. A dance academy, Sophia said. For children? Mostly, Sienna said. Some adults. We take students regardless of ability to pay. That must be expensive to maintain. Yes, Sienna said. Luca supports this? Sophia asked, looking at him with an expression that was pleasant and meant something specific. Sienna supports it, Luca said. It's her program. I don't interfere with things she's built. The table absorbed this. She felt the shift in it. Something in the answer had landed correctly, had told these people something about the nature of this marriage that no amount of performance could have communicated as efficiently. Sophia looked at Sienna with something warmer. Good, she said simply. By the time the main course was cleared, she understood why Luca had said to just be herself. These people had spent decades reading performances. They were not reading what she said. They were reading the specific texture of how she occupied the room, whether she deferred to Luca or existed beside him, whether she was afraid of the situation or inside it. She was inside it. She had stopped being afraid of it somewhere between the salad and the entree, and the stopping had been organic, not performed, and she thought they could see that. Don Ricci, at the head of the table, was watching Luca specifically. She caught it in the corner of her attention. The old man's gaze moving to him at intervals, assessing something beyond the social surface. Something had changed in Don Ricci's quality of attention since the evening began. She couldn't locate it precisely, only register it as a change. After dessert, the group moved to a large sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows, and the city spread out below them in lights. People subdivided into smaller conversations. Luca was taken aside by Ferrante, which she understood was intentional. She found herself standing near the window with Don Ricci and a glass of wine she was holding mostly for occupation. He worries about you, Don Ricci said quietly. She looked at him. In this setting, the old man continued, a man's attention moves the way water moves. It finds its level, his level. He nodded almost imperceptibly toward Luca, 20 feet away in conversation with Ferrante. Keeps finding you. She said nothing. I have been in this world for 50 years, Don Ricci said. I have seen men use women, discard women, protect women for the wrong reasons. What I see with Luca, he paused, turning his wine glass slowly, is not a man managing an asset. He looked at her. Does that concern you? Should it? She said. That depends, he said, on what you want. She looked out at the city. I want my studio to survive, she said. I want the kids who can't afford lessons to keep getting them. I want... She stopped. Simple things. Simple things are the hardest to protect, he said. He was quiet for a moment. The alliance will be confirmed next week. There is a formal gala. The Hotel Marceau. I expect you both to attend. We'll be there, she said. He nodded, touched her arm briefly, the kind of gesture that meant something in his world, and moved away. She stood at the window with the city below her and the specific unquiet feeling of a woman who was no longer entirely sure where the line was between the arrangement and the reality, and who was not ready to look at that directly. Not tonight. The car ride back to the estate was quiet in the first way, the comfortable kind, not the tense kind. Luca sat beside her and looked out the window, and she sat beside him and looked out the other window, and the city moved past them. Ferrante confirmed, he said. The alliance is back on track. Don Ricci told me about the gala, she said. I know. He told me he told you. A pause. He also told me... Luca stopped. What? That you reminded him of his wife. He said it carefully, like he wasn't sure yet what to do with it. She died 11 years ago. He said she was the only person in his life who told him the truth without wrapping it in something else. She looked at the side of his face in the dark of the car. That's a heavy comparison, she said. Yes, he said. She looked back out the window. Luca, she said. Yes. When this is over, she stopped, reformulated. When the month is done and the alliance is stable and whatever's going to happen with Vescari has happened. She paused. Do you actually want to continue? The arrangement, the separation, all of it going the way we planned? He was quiet for a very long time, long enough that the car left the city streets and began the climb toward the estate. What I want, he said finally, and what's safe for you are not necessarily the same thing. She absorbed this. That's not an answer, she said. No, he said. It isn't. She didn't push it. The car turned through the gate. The estate rose ahead of them, lit from within, guards at the perimeter. Home, her brain offered, and she shut that down immediately and got out of the car. She was awake at 1 a.m. when the text arrived, not from an unknown number this time, from Renzo. Come to the security room, now, don't wake Luca. She was in the hallway in under a minute, barefoot, moving fast. The security room was on the ground floor beside the garage. She had been shown it on day one as part of Renzo's thorough and somewhat terrifying orientation. It was a small room lined with monitors, currently showing 8 different angles of the property, and a laptop open on the desk. Renzo was standing with Marco. Both of them were looking at the laptop screen. She crossed to it, looked. It was a financial document, corporate records, the kind Marco had been working through for 2 days, the Delaware Shell Company hierarchy. But this page was different from what she had seen before. This was deeper, a 5th layer down from the Cayman Holdings Company, a direct beneficial ownership record that the nominee structure had been designed to conceal. The name on the document was not Adrian Vescari. She read it again. She felt her stomach drop. Then she felt something after the drop, something colder and more specific. The particular sickness of a betrayal that was not abstract, not distant, but personal. When did you find this? She said. 40 minutes ago, Marco said. Does Luca know? No, Renzo said. Why not? Renzo looked at her steadily. Because it's his brother's name on that document. The room didn't move. The monitors cycled through their 8 angles, driveway, gate, garden, perimeter, and the bay was dark beyond the fence, and somewhere in this house, Luca Moretti was sleeping, and somewhere in a corporate record that had been buried under 4 layers of deliberate obscurity, his brother's signature sat above Adrian Vescari's like a hand above a knife. She read the document again. Matteo Moretti, 32 years old. Luca's younger brother, who according to what she'd gathered in casual conversation was semi-retired from the family business, who lived in Marin County, who attended family events without enthusiasm, and had reportedly never wanted the operational life. The quiet brother. The one who stayed out of it. His name was on the beneficial ownership record of the company that had funded the drugged wedding. His signature authorized the initial capital transfer to the Delaware Shell, dated 6 months ago. He's been planning this for 6 months, she said. At minimum, Marco said. She looked at Renzo. Why didn't you wake Luca? Renzo's expression was the specific expression of a man who had been loyal to someone for a very long time and was currently holding information that would destroy something that loyalty was built around. Because, he said carefully, when Luca finds out it was Matteo, and he will find out, tonight if we tell him, tomorrow if we don't. The way he finds out, and who he finds out from, will determine what happens next. In this family, this kind of information, he paused. It doesn't leave room for careful thinking. You want me to tell him, she said. I want someone who isn't us to tell him, Renzo said. Someone he stopped. Someone he trusts, Marco said quietly. She stared at the document. She thought about Luca's face in the car. What I want and what's safe for you are not necessarily the same thing. She thought about a man who had cooked her breakfast and told her the truth about everything he could tell her the truth about, and had looked at her across a dinner table all evening with an attention he probably didn't know was as visible as it was. She thought about his brother's name on a document authorizing the drugging of 2 people and the death of a man named Dominic, and the systematic attempt to dismantle everything Luca had built. All right, she said. I'll tell him. Bad. She knocked on his study door because the light was still on. It was always still on. She had stopped being surprised by this. He opened it in the same clothes he'd worn to the dinner, jacket off, sleeves up. He took one look at her face and stepped back to let her in. She didn't sit down. She stood in front of his desk, and she put the photograph of the document on it. Marco had printed it. She hadn't asked him to. He had just known. And she watched Luca pick it up. She watched his face. This was the part she would remember for a long time. The specific sequence of expressions. The way comprehension arrived not all at once, but in stages, like watching a building absorb damage. First the professional assessment, reading the document. Then the moment his eyes found the name. Then the absolute stillness that was not controlled. It was the stillness of something stopped, the specific absence of motion that follows shock rather than preceding it. He didn't move for a long time. She didn't say anything. Matteo, he said. His voice was... She had no word for it. Not empty. The opposite of empty, full of something that had no outlet yet. Yes, she said. This is authenticated. Marco spent 2 hours verifying the chain, she said. There's no misread. The capital transfer, the authorization signature, the timeline. It's Matteo. He built the structure 6 months ago. He brought Viscari in as the operational layer. Luca put the document down on the desk very carefully. The care of it was worse than if he'd thrown it. He turned away from her, walked to the window, stood with his back to the room. The bay outside was black and motionless. She waited. Why? He said. Not to her, to the window. I don't know, she said. I'm sorry. He never wanted... He stopped. He told me he didn't want the business. He told me 10 years ago he was out. I believed him. I let him out. His voice had dropped to something very quiet and very flat that was harder to hear than anger would have been. I protected him from everything. Every decision, every consequence, every piece of this that I didn't want him to carry. He stopped. She crossed the room. She didn't touch him. She stood beside him at the window and looked out at the dark water alongside him. He wasn't out, she said quietly. He was waiting. For what? For the right moment, she said. For the alliance to be valuable enough that taking it from you was worth the risk. Luca's reflection in the dark glass was barely visible. The outline of him, the set of his shoulders, the jaw she had memorized in the past week without meaning to. He tried to have you killed, she said. Dominic is dead because your brother decided he was a loose thread. The people he hired were prepared to... She paused. If the alliance had collapsed the way he planned, if you had been exposed as weak and the Calabrese had walked, he would have come for you next. Luca turned from the window. She had seen him controlled, and she had seen him cold, and she had seen him the brief flicker of something warm and unguarded. She had not seen this, the specific quality of a man whose architecture had just collapsed, who was standing in the rubble of it and hadn't yet decided whether to rebuild or burn. He's my brother, Luca said. I know, she said. He pressed one hand flat against the window frame. I taught him chess. Our father was never... I was the one who taught him. I was 12 and he was 9, and I taught him every game I knew because I wanted him to have... He stopped hard. I wanted him to be different from me. The silence between them was enormous. What do you need to do? She said. He looked at her. His eyes were... She made herself hold the eye contact because looking away would have been wrong, would have been the one wrong move in this moment. I need to find out how much of my organization he's compromised, he said. I need to know who else knew. He stopped. I need to call him. Not yet, she said. If you call him now, he'll know you know. He'll move whatever he hasn't moved yet. Luca looked at her. Give Renzo tonight to map the network, she said. Figure out who Matteo has been talking to inside the organization. Then you have full information before you make contact. She paused. You only get one move here. Make it the right one. He stared at her for a long moment. Something moved through his expression. Multiple things, in sequence, none of them simple. You're very calm, he said. One of us has to be, she said. His jaw tightened, released. This isn't your problem, he said. This is my family. My failure. You didn't... I'm in this house, she said. That man arranged for people to watch this house. Dominic died because of this. I am in this, Luca. Stop trying to draw a line around me. He went very still. I'm in it, she said. Use that. Let me help you think. The study was quiet. The monitors in the security room 2 doors away cycled through their 8 angles. The gate camera showed the guard making his round. The bay camera showed nothing but dark water. Luca moved to his desk, sat down, pulled the document toward him and looked at it again. Not with the first shock now, but with the cold, focused attention she recognized, the machine coming back online. Renzo, he said. Renzo appeared in the doorway so quickly she understood he had been standing just outside it. Map Matteo's communication contacts inside the organization, Luca said. Everyone he's called, texted, met with in the last 6 months. All of it, by morning. Already started, Renzo said. Luca looked at him. You knew it was going to be him, he said quietly. It was not an accusation. It was a recognition.
Renzo's face did something difficult. I suspected, he said. I didn't want to be right. Luca nodded once. Go, he said. Renzo went. Luca sat at his desk and looked at the document and did not move, and she sat in the chair across from him. Same chair she'd sat in when he'd explained the alliance, when she'd learned the shape of the world she had walked into. And she stayed. She did not offer comfort. She did not try to soften the edges of what he was carrying. She just stayed.
At some point, around 3 a.m., he looked up from the document spread across his desk and found her still there and said nothing for a moment. Then, when I was 29 and my father died, Matteo was the only person who... He stopped, started differently. I thought he was the one person who wouldn't. I know, she said. That's the part that... He pressed 2 fingers against the bridge of his nose, breathed. That's the part. She understood. It wasn't the threat to the organization. It wasn't the Alliance or the Calabrese or Adrian Vescari or any of the machinery of it. It was that the one person he had believed was safe had been the hand on the knife all along. At 4:15 a.m., Renzo came back. He put a printed list on the desk. 14 names from within the Moretti organization who had been in contact with Matteo with notable frequency over the past 6 months. 2 of them were senior enough that their compromise would cripple specific operational segments. One of them was a man named Paolo, who was Luca's head of personal security, who had been with the family for 19 years. Luca looked at the list for a long time. Then he stood up, his chair scraped back. He picked up his phone. What are you doing? She said. Calling Matteo, he said. Luca, I know, he said. I know the move isn't now, but if I sit here until morning with this... He looked at her. His face was not the controlled blankness she had learned to read. It was something underneath that, something that had gotten past the architecture and was looking at her directly. I can't do that. I can't sit here knowing and wait. She stood up. Then don't call, she said. Call the gala. Call Don Ricci. He stopped. Call Ricci tonight, she said. Not about Matteo, about the gala. Tell him you need to move the timeline, that you have new information about the threat to the Alliance, and you need the formal confirmation to happen at the event, publicly, so that whoever is working against you has no move left after. She watched him think through it. If Matteo finds out the Alliance is being confirmed publicly at the gala, he'll move before then, she said. He'll want to destroy it before it's official. He'll come into the open. Luca looked at her. You're asking me to use the gala as a trap, he said. I'm asking you to let your brother believe he still has time, she said, and use that against him. The study held its breath. If this goes wrong, Luca said quietly, it will go wrong in front of every powerful person in my world. In front of Don Ricci, in front of every family that is watching to see whether I'm strong enough to hold what I have. He paused. If it goes wrong, there is no recovering from it. I know, she said. You understand what you're suggesting. Yes. And you're still suggesting it. She looked at him steadily. You said everything in your world is a test, she said. Then pass it. Luca Moretti stood in the wreckage of his brother's betrayal in the 4 a.m. dark of his study and looked at the woman across the desk from him who had come into this involuntarily and had stayed voluntarily and had just looked at the hardest possible move and told him to make it. He picked up his phone. He called Don Ricci. Bauman. Don Ricci answered on the 3rd ring. It was 4:22 in the morning, and the old man answered his phone on the 3rd ring with a voice that was alert rather than groggy, which told Luca things about how Don Ricci slept and what kind of man stayed that calibrated at that hour. Luca spoke for 6 minutes. He did not tell Ricci about Matteo. He told Ricci about the threat structure, about Vescari as the operational face, about the need to make the gala's alliance confirmation a public and irrevocable act rather than a private arrangement that could be disrupted beforehand. Ricci listened without interrupting. Then he said, You want to draw them into the open. Yes, Luca said. And if they come into the open at my event, I will handle it, Luca said. You have my word that nothing touches your house, your guests, or the alliance itself. A long pause. The kind of pause that had decisions inside it. Thursday evening, Ricci said finally. Hotel Marceau, 7 o'clock. I will have my security coordinate with Renzo by noon. Another pause.
Luca? Yes.
Whatever you're not telling me, I trust you to know whether I need to know it before Thursday.
You don't, Luca said. Not yet.
All right, Ricci said, and hung up. Luca put the phone down on the desk. He stood with both hands flat on the wood surface and breathed once, slowly, the way a man breathed when he was building something inside himself that needed to hold weight. Sienna was still in the chair across the desk. She had not moved. Thursday gives us 3 days, she said. Yes. What happens in 3 days? He looked up. We find out how deep Matteo's network goes inside the organization. We identify which of the 14 names on that list are operational, who can act, who can only inform. We build a cordon around the gala that Matteo's people can't see until it's already closed around them. He paused. And we do all of it without Matteo knowing we know. Can you do that? I've spent 10 years building things that couldn't be seen until they were already in place, he said. Yes. She looked at him. He looked at her. The study was very quiet. Go sleep, he said. You've been awake for 30 hours. So have you. I'm accustomed to it. So am I, she said, which was not entirely true, but was true enough. He looked at her for a moment with that expression she had no clean word for, the one that arrived and lingered and that she had stopped pretending wasn't there. Sienna, he said. Don't, she said. He stopped. Not tonight, she said. There's too much happening tonight for anything else to happen tonight. A beat. Then he nodded, once, the specific nod of a man accepting a boundary that he understood and intended to respect. She got up and went to bed and lay on the ceiling for 2 hours before something in her finally gave out and she slept. The next 3 days had a quality she had not experienced before. The hyper-real compression of time, when everything matters and the margin for error is zero. She had felt something adjacent to it before. In competition. In the hours before a performance, when the choreography had to stop living in your head and start living in your body. But this was different in the specific way that the stakes were different. This was not a performance where the worst outcome was failure. This was something where the worst outcomes were things she did not allow herself to name during daylight hours. Renzo worked through the first night and the second with the focused exhaustion of a man who had been doing this for 20 years and had no illusions about what any of it meant. By Tuesday evening, he had reduced the 14 names to 7 actionable ones. Men inside the organization who had received not just communication from Matteo, but specific operational instructions. 2 of them had been told to be at the Hotel Marceau on Thursday night, not as guests, as something else. Paolo, Luca's head of personal security, 19 years in the family, had received a wire transfer from one of Matteo's shell accounts 4 months ago. The amount was large enough to mean something significant. Renzo put this information in front of Luca on Tuesday afternoon, and Luca sat with it for a long time without speaking. And then he said, "Pull him off the gala detail. Tell him the assignment changed. Don't let him know he's been made." And after Thursday, Renzo said, Luca's jaw tightened. After Thursday. On Wednesday, Sienna went to her studio. Luca's driver took her. 2 additional cars followed, which she had been told about in advance and had agreed to without argument because she had made that deal, and she intended to keep it. Maya was already there when she arrived. Maya, who was 40 years old and had been her partner in the studio for 6 years, and who took one look at Sienna in the doorway and crossed the floor and hugged her with the fierce efficiency of someone who had been worried for days and was converting the worry directly into physical contact. "You look terrible," Maya said. "Thank you," Sienna said. "Are you okay? Actually okay, not performing okay?" She stopped, thought about it honestly. "I'm in the middle of something. I'm not hurt. I'm thinking clearly." Maya stepped back and looked at her. Maya had the specific perception of a woman who had known Sienna for 6 years and had watched her navigate her father's death and a broken engagement and 3 near failures of this studio, and who therefore could not be managed. "The man," Maya said. "It's complicated. Is he good to you?" She thought about eggs made with one hand, text messages about libraries at 1 a.m. "I've learned you're comfortable with no. A man absorbing the worst news of his life and letting her stay in the room." "Yes," she said, "in his way." Maya looked at her for a long moment. "His way better be enough," she said. "I'll let you know," Sienna said. She taught a class. Beginner adults, Wednesday morning, 7 students who were there for stress relief and community rather than technical development, who needed a patient voice and clear counts, and someone who made the space feel safe. She gave them all of that. She stood in front of the mirror with her students behind her and moved through combinations she had taught 100 times, and the familiar language of it, weight, breath, the body's grammar, steadied something in her that had been unsteady since Vegas. She watched her own face in the mirror at one point and did not recognize the expression on it, and then she did, and what she recognized was resolved. She drove back to the estate in the afternoon with 3 security cars and a specific clarity about what Thursday night needed to be. Wednesday night, Matteo called. Luca's phone was on the kitchen island between them. They had been eating dinner, which had become a habit. The 2 of them at the kitchen island at 8 p.m. with the bay going dark outside, and the domesticity of it was something neither of them named because naming it would have required decisions neither of them was ready to make. The phone screen lit up. Matteo. Sienna looked at it. Luca looked at it. Neither of them moved for 2 full seconds. Then Luca picked it up and answered. "Hey," Matteo said. His voice was easy, warm, the voice of a man with nothing to hide, or the voice of a man who had been practicing having nothing to hide for a very long time. "How are you holding up? I saw everything online, the wedding, the papers." "I'm fine," Luca said. His voice was... She watched his face and was stunned by it, by the complete absence of anything, by the specific skill of a man who had learned, at some cost she could only imagine, to be entirely hollow on command. "She seems interesting," Matteo said. "The woman. Sienna. Have you actually talked to her, or is it all..." "We've talked," Luca said. "Yeah?" Something in Matteo's voice shifted, almost imperceptible, a fractional increase in attention. "What's she like?" "Honest," Luca said. "Inconveniently." A short laugh. "That's new for you." "Yes," Luca said. "The Calabrese thing? Is it salvageable?" Ricci seemed pissed at the dinner. "Working on it," Luca said. "Let me know if you need anything. I can reach out to Ferrante if..." "I've got it," Luca said. "Thanks for calling." A pause. "You sure you're okay?" "I'm sure I'm," Luca said. "I'll talk to you after Thursday." Another pause, fractionally longer than natural. "What's Thursday?" "Gala at Hotel Marceau," Luca said. "Alliance confirmation. Come if you want." The pause this time was very brief and very specific, and she watched Luca's face not move at all while it happened. "I'll try to make it," Matteo said. "Good," Luca said. "Good night." He hung up. He put the phone face down on the island. He picked up his fork and finished his dinner. She watched him do all of this and felt something enormous and complicated move through her chest, and she ate the rest of her dinner without saying anything because there was nothing to say. After a while, Luca said, quietly, looking at his plate, "He'll be there Thursday." "Yes," she said. "He won't come himself. He'll send Vescari in front and stay at a distance until he sees which way it's going." "What do we do about that?" Luca looked up. "We make sure he sees which way it's going early enough that he steps forward to stop it." "How?" "By making the confirmation public and irrevocable," he said. "Don Ricci will formally announce the alliance in front of everyone. The moment that happens, the moment it's done, on record, in that room, Matteo's entire operation fails. Everything he spent 6 months building becomes worthless." He paused. "At that point, he either disappears or he does something visible. Either one tells me what I need to know." "And if he does something visible," she said, "in that room," Luca's face was still. "I handle it," he said. She held his gaze. "I want to be there." "You will be. You're my wife at that event." He said it flatly, without any inflection she could read. "Which also means..." "I know," she said. "I'm a target." "Yes. I understand that." "Sienna, I understand it," she said. "I'm not changing my mind." He looked at her for a long time across the kitchen island with the cold bay behind him, and the dinner between them going ordinary and domestic in the specific way that things that were not ordinary or domestic sometimes did, and he said, "Okay, just that." Thursday. The Hotel Marceau, was 12 stories of pre-war architecture in the financial district, the kind of building that had hosted significant events for 90 years and wore the weight of them in its stone and marble and the specific quality of its silence. The ballroom was on the 4th floor, crystal chandeliers, walls of champagne-colored fabric, a room designed to make every event inside it feel like the most important event currently occurring in the world. By 6:30, it mostly was. Sienna stood in front of the mirror in the suite Luca had booked for preparation and looked at herself and did not recognize the woman looking back in any bad way, just in the way that you sometimes stepped outside yourself and saw a thing clearly. The dress was dark green, floor length, the kind that moved when you moved. Her hair up. She had done it herself, which had taken 45 minutes and 3 attempts, and it looked like it had taken 45 minutes and 3 attempts, which she had decided was correct. She could hear Luca in the adjacent room, low voice, phone, the clipped cadence of final confirmations. Renzo appeared in the doorway of her room. "Walk through," he said. She followed him through the suite and into the hall, and he walked her through the event layout in 10 minutes. Entrance, ballroom positions, 2 service exits, the specific location where Don Ricci would stand for the formal announcement, the positions of Renzo's team distributed through the crowd in evening wear, visible to her and Luca and invisible to everyone else. "Viscari's been confirmed in the building," Renzo said. "Ground floor bar, 40 minutes ago. He has 2 men with him." "Matteo?" "Not in the building yet," Renzo said. "We have eyes on his car. He left Marin 40 minutes ago." She nodded. "If something happens in that ballroom," Renzo said, and his voice had the specific quality of a man saying difficult things with professional directness, "you move toward the east service exit, not the main doors. East exit. There will be someone there." "All right," she said. "Don't try to—" He paused. "Don't try to help. In the room, if something happens, you move and you let us handle it." She looked at him. "You've worked for Luca for how long?" 16 years, he said. "And you've seen how many situations like this?" "Several," he said. "Did the people who moved toward the east exit survive them?" He looked at her steadily. "Yes," he said. "Then I'll move to the east exit," she said. He nodded. Something in his expression, not warmth exactly, still not built for it, but something that functioned as warmth. He had started, she realized, sometime in the past week, to treat her as a person rather than a variable. She did not know what she had done to earn that, and she was not going to examine it closely tonight. She went back to the suite. Luca was standing at the window when she came in. He had changed into the kind of suit that cost more than she made in 6 months and wore it like it was nothing, which it was for him, and he was looking at the city below with the still attention she had seen on him the first night at table 9 and every night since. Predator still. Something that was measuring everything. He turned when she came in. He looked at her for a moment. "You look—" He stopped. "Don't," she said. "I was going to say ready," he said. "Oh," she said. Something pulled at the corner of his mouth. "Although," he said, and stopped again. "Don't push it," she said. He almost smiled. Almost. She had learned that almost smile, the precise geography of it, over 10 days in this house, and she was done pretending she hadn't. "Viscari is in the building," she said. "I know," he said. "Matteo is 12 minutes out." "He'll stay at the edge," she said. "He'll wait for the announcement, and if he doesn't have a move before that, he'll—" "He has a move," Luca said. "He's had a move planned since he started this. The gala was always part of his timeline. He anticipated it." He looked at her. "What we've changed is who knows what before the room comes together." She absorbed this. "What's his move?" "The footage," Luca said. "From the wedding. He has a copy. Viscari held it back from what we recovered. He was going to release it in the middle of the announcement. Interrupt the confirmation with the footage of the drugged wedding, expose it as a scandal in front of every family in that room, in front of Ricci, destroy the alliance in the moment it was being formalized." He paused. "That was the plan." "Was," she said. "Marco found the distribution setup yesterday," Luca said. "The platform, the timing trigger, the file location. He neutralized it this afternoon." She stared at him. "You didn't tell me." "I'm telling you now," he said. "I needed to be certain before I—" He stopped. "I didn't want to give you information that turned out to be wrong." She looked at him steadily. Don't do that again, she said. Whatever you know, I know. We agreed. His jaw tightened. We agreed on the arrangement, he said. We agreed, she said, and the evenness of her voice was iron, and he heard it. Yes, he said after a moment. All right. So the footage is neutralized, she said, which means Vescari arrives at this event thinking he has a weapon and finds out in the room that he doesn't. Yes. And Matteo finds out in the room that his entire operation is over, Luca said. Everything he built for 6 months goes to nothing in the moment Ricci makes the announcement. He paused. And then I'll see what he does with that. The way he said it, the flatness of it. She understood that whatever he was carrying about Matteo, the chess lessons, the brother he had tried to protect, the person he had believed was safe, was still there, still enormous, and had been placed somewhere internal and load-bearing where it would hold the weight until this was over and then could not hold it anymore. She crossed the room. She stood in front of him. She fixed his pocket square, which did not need fixing because she needed something to do with her hands, and he was standing there, and his hand came up and covered hers, briefly, 2 seconds, the specific warmth and weight of it. Then he let go. Time to go, he said. Holtz. The ballroom at 7:15 was everything the room was designed to produce, beautiful and charged, 200 people in evening wear with crystal glasses and the specific brightness of people who had power and knew how to wear it in public. The chandeliers threw light across everything, equalizing. Beneath the light, the geometries of alliance and opposition arranged themselves with the social precision of groups that understood exactly what this room represented. Sienna moved through it beside Luca. She felt it immediately, the quality of attention when they entered, not the anonymous attention of the casino floor. This was specific, triangulated, the focused regard of people who knew why these two people were in this room and what it meant. She kept her shoulders back and her pace easy, and she did not look for Vescari or for Matteo. She let Luca guide her through the first exchanges. Ricci, who greeted them with the warmth of a man whose confidence had been secured. Ferrante, Sofia, 3 other names she catalogued as she went. She shook hands. She made eye contact. She answered questions with the direct brevity she had always used, and she watched the small recalibrations in people's expressions as they registered her. Not performing, not anxious, simply present. She remembered what Don Ricci had said. A woman who tells the truth without wrapping it in something else. She was that. She had always been that. Tonight it was also a tactic. At 7:40 she found Vescari. He was at the far edge of the room near one of the champagne stations, and she recognized him from the photograph Renzo had showed her on Tuesday. Mid-40s, compact, with the well-maintained appearance of a man who spent money on looking like someone who didn't try. He was watching the room with an ease that she understood now was performed, and he had 2 men flanking him at a social distance that was just close enough to be operational. He saw her looking. He smiled. It was the smile of a man who believed he was watching a clock count down. She held his gaze for 2 seconds and then moved her eyes away with the unhurried ease of someone who has simply finished looking at a thing and found it uninteresting. She felt his attention follow her across the room. Good. She found Luca beside Ricci near the center of the room. She arrived at his shoulder, and he turned and she said very quietly, "Vescari is at the East Champagne station. He's made me. He's waiting." Luca's expression did not change. He reached out and took her hand, publicly, the gesture of a husband, which it also was not, which it also was, and said equally quietly, "Matteo arrived 4 minutes ago. He's in the mezzanine bar above the ballroom." She did not look up. "Watching the room," she said. "Watching the room," he confirmed. Don Ricci said something to Luca in Italian. Luca responded. The conversation had the quality of a final confirmation, a last check of readiness. Ricci looked at Sienna once, briefly, with the expression she had come to recognize as his form of approval, which was more valuable in this room than she would have understood 3 weeks ago. At 7:55, Ricci moved toward the small, elevated platform at the front of the room where a microphone had been placed. The room's energy shifted, the specific compression of 200 people adjusting their attention simultaneously, conversations tapering, glasses held rather than sipped. Luca's hand was still holding hers. His grip tightened, very slightly. She felt the tension in it. the controlled force of a man holding himself at a specific calibration. She squeezed back. He looked at her sideways. She did not look at him. Ricci began speaking. His voice carried the room without effort, the voice of a man who had commanded rooms for 50 years and had nothing left to prove about it. He spoke about alliance and stability and the future of the arrangements being formalized tonight. He spoke with the specific gravity of someone making things official in the way that mattered. Not legally, not contractually, but in the way that could not be undone in front of these witnesses. She was watching Vescari. She saw the moment he understood the footage was gone. It was in the hands, the slight movement of the right hand toward his inside jacket pocket, the check, the absence of the phone that should have been vibrating with a confirmation. He checked again. Then the quality of his stillness changed. The difference between a man waiting for something to happen and a man who has just discovered the thing he was waiting for is not coming. He looked across the room. He found Luca. Luca was looking directly at him. The entire exchange took 3 seconds and covered 20 feet of ballroom floor and contained, she understood, everything. The acknowledgement that the trap had closed, that the weapon was gone, that the 6 months of construction had landed on nothing. Vescari turned toward the exit. One of Renzo's men was already there. Another one appeared at the secondary exit. Vescari stopped moving. He stood very still with a glass of champagne he was no longer drinking, and his 2 operational men flanking him in the specific helplessness of someone who has run out of moves and knows it. Ricci was still speaking. The announcement was 3 sentences from completion when she heard it. Not loud, not violent, just the sound of movement in the mezzanine above, a shift in weight, a change in the specific quality of the room's acoustics as something overhead changed position. She looked up. Matteo Moretti was standing at the mezzanine railing. He was younger looking than she'd expected from the photographs. Or maybe it was just the specific quality of someone who had not yet fully inhabited the decision they'd made, who still looked like a person rather than the shape of what they'd done. He was looking down at the room with an expression that she could read, even from this distance, as the expression of someone watching something they cannot stop arrive. Ricci finished the announcement. The room responded. The specific sound of 200 people whose significant business has just concluded in the way they needed it to conclude. The release of held breath, the resumed conversations, the glasses raised. The alliance was done. On record, witnessed, irrevocable. Matteo's hands were on the railing. She could see them from here. She watched his knuckles. Luca released her hand. He turned to her, and his face was... She had no word for it, still had no word for it. A man carrying too many things at once and carrying them without spilling any of them. And he said very quietly, "Stay with Renzo." Luca. Sienna. He said her name like it was the period at the end of a sentence, like it was the one clear thing in the room. "Stay with Renzo." He turned and walked toward the mezzanine stairs. The room continued around her. Conversations, glasses, the warm aftermath of a formalization. And Renzo was at her shoulder instantly, and she stood and watched Luca move through the crowd with the specific quality of motion she had first registered across a casino floor 10 days ago. Deliberate, contained, the absolute economy of a man who had decided where he was going and what he was going to do when he got there. She watched him reach the stairs. Renzo said very quietly beside her, "East exit is clear." "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "Miss Vale, I'm not going anywhere," she said again. She watched Luca reach the top of the stairs and step onto the mezzanine, and the low sound of the crowd and the chandeliers and the champagne covered everything above, and she could not see them anymore. Only the mezzanine railing and the 2 shapes behind it, and the room between her and whatever was happening above was enormous and very small simultaneously, and her heart was doing something she had stopped trying to manage, and Renzo was a steady presence at her shoulder. And she stood in the middle of the ballroom of the Hotel Marceau, and she waited. 3 minutes. 4. Then Luca appeared at the top of the stairs. Alone. He descended into the ballroom with the same economy he'd climbed with, and she searched his face from across the room as he crossed toward her, reading the specific topography of it. The jaw, the eyes, the set of his shoulders. He reached her. "Where is he?" she said. "Leaving," Luca said. "Through the north exit. Renzo's men will..." He paused. "He won't be a problem." "Are you..." She looked at him. What happened up there? He looked at her for a long moment. I told him, Luca said, that I knew. All of it. Dominic, Vescari, the Delaware Company, 6 months of it. He paused. And I told him that I was giving him one exit. One. Because he's my brother, and because I made a choice about what that means, even when it's... He stopped, jaw tight. Even when it's this. She held his gaze. And he took it? She said. Yes, Luca said. Something moved through his expression, the enormous, unprocessable thing that had been living in him since 4 a.m. Tuesday, not resolved, not gone, but changed somehow, the shape of it different now that the confrontation had happened. He took it. She nodded. And Vescari? She said. Renzo, Luca said simply. She understood what that meant, and she did not ask more questions about it. The ballroom hummed around them. Don Ricci was across the room in conversation with Ferrante, and the evening was continuing in the way that significant evenings continued once the significant part was done, and no one in this room except the people who needed to know knew what had just happened. Luca looked at her. She looked at him. It's not over, she said. No, he said. There are still the 14 names, still the cleanup, still... He stopped. It will take time. I know, she said. The month, he said carefully. The arrangement. He paused. You should know that I'm not going to hold you to that. She looked at him. I'm not holding you to any of it, he said. What I owe you, the money, I'll honor all of it. But you're not obligated to... Luca, she said. He stopped. She looked at him in the middle of the ballroom with the chandeliers overhead, and the alliance confirmed, and the room full of people who would never understand the specific weight of the last 10 days. And she thought about a bus at 3 a.m., and a ring she hadn't taken off, and a library she had eventually gone to at 2 in the morning, and a man who cooked eggs with one hand and told her the truth, and looked at her like she was the most real thing in his world. She thought, 1 month was always a lie, you told yourself. She thought, you knew that before you got in the car. She said, ask me again. After tonight, when this room is empty and it's just us, ask me again. Something broke open in his expression. Briefly, just briefly, the architecture giving way to whatever was underneath it. And it was, she had no word for it. She was going to need a new word. She was going to have to build one from scratch. All right, he said. His hand found hers again, and this time it was not the gesture of a husband performing for a room, and they both knew it, and the room continued around them, oblivious. The ballroom emptied slowly, the way significant rooms always did. People reluctant to leave a space where something had been decided, as though proximity to the event might transfer some of its weight to them. Sienna stood near the window with a glass of water she had been holding for 40 minutes and watched it happen. The servers moved through collecting glasses. The chandeliers stayed bright for now, the hotel staff trained to let guests leave at their own pace, rather than dim the lights and make the decision for them. Don Ricci departed with Ferrante at his shoulder, and before he left, he crossed to Sienna and took her hand and held it briefly and said nothing, which she understood as the highest register of what he knew how to give. Luca was across the room with Renzo. They were speaking in the compressed way they spoke when the content was operational and the time was short, and she watched Luca's face during it. The controlled attention, the economy of his responses, the jaw that tightened and released as information arrived. He had not looked at her since the moment his hand had found hers, and the room had continued around them oblivious. But she could feel the awareness of her in his posture, the way you felt weather before it arrived, a change in the specific quality of the air. She put her water glass down on a passing server's tray and smoothed the front of her dress and walked toward him. Renzo saw her coming and finished his sentence and stepped back. She appreciated this about Renzo, his specific efficiency, the way he understood what a room needed without being told. What still needs to happen tonight? She said. Luca turned. Vescari is being processed, he said, choosing the word with the care of a man editing in real time. His 2 operational men are contained. The 14 names in the organization are being moved off active roles simultaneously. By the time any of them realize it, the access is already gone. Matteo? She said. Something crossed his face. He crossed the bridge an hour ago. He has a standing arrangement with a property in Nevada, a place I set up for him years ago, off the books, when I wanted him to have somewhere safe if the business ever came close enough to threaten him. A pause. It's a good property, quiet. He'll be comfortable. She held his gaze. And permanently? Permanently, he said. He is out of everything, every asset, every account with my name attached, every connection to the organization. He said it evenly. He keeps his life and a modest arrangement because I decided that's what my answer is. Other people in my world would have a different answer. But it's your answer, she said. It's my answer, he said. She nodded. Is it enough? He looked at her for a moment. No, he said, but it's what I have. The honesty of it landed the way his honesty always landed, cleanly, without cushioning, in the specific place where things were actually true. All right, she said. Let's go home. He went still for just a moment. The word, the way she'd used it, the specific weight of home when it arrived in a sentence without being announced. She had said it without thinking, and she did not walk it back. Yes, he said quietly. Let's go. The estate was lit when they arrived, the exterior lights on their overnight settings, the guards doing their rounds with the unhurried professionalism of people doing a job rather than responding to a crisis. The crisis had passed, not resolved in any clean sense, not finished in the way that things finished in stories where everything was wrappable, but passed in the way that weather passed, the worst of it over, the evidence of it everywhere, the air afterward different from the air before. Sienna went directly to the kitchen. She put water on to boil because she needed something to do with her hands, and because the ritual of it, the specific sequence of kettle and cups, and the searching of cabinets for the tea she had identified on day 3 as the one she preferred, grounded her in the ordinary in a way she needed right now. She was still in the green dress. Her shoes were off, left at the kitchen doorway without ceremony. She heard Luca come in, heard him stop at the doorway. She did not turn around. Sit down, she said. I'm making tea. A pause. Then the sound of the kitchen stool and his weight settling onto it with the exhaustion of a man who had been holding something enormous for 72 hours and was only now allowing himself to put it down. She made 2 cups. She put his in front of him without asking what he took in it, because she knew by now she had watched him make it himself often enough that she knew without thinking. She sat across the island from him and wrapped both hands around her own cup. He looked at the tea, then he looked at her. I want to tell you something, he said. All right, she said. When Matteo and I were up on that mezzanine, he said, the first thing he said to me, the very first thing, before I said anything, before he knew how much I knew, was that he was sorry. He paused. Not tactical, not a move. He said it before he understood the situation. He said, I'm sorry, Luca. She held the mug and listened. And I don't know what to do with that, he said. I don't know if it means anything or if it's just the thing that comes out when someone gets caught, the automatic thing. I don't know how to read my own brother anymore. He stopped. I don't know when I stopped being able to read him. She thought about this carefully before she said, maybe you never could. Maybe that's not a failure of yours. Some people are very good at being read the way they want to be read. I should have been better, he said. I've spent 15 years reading rooms and reading people, and you loved him, she said. That's different from being bad at reading people. Love changes what you see, not because you're stupid, because you're human. She paused. That's not a character flaw. It's just what it costs. Luca was quiet for a long time. The tea steamed between them. I built this entire organization, he said finally, on knowing exactly what every person around me was capable of. What they do under pressure, what they do for money, what they do for power. I knew all of it. Every room, every player. A pause. I didn't know my brother. No, she said. That's going to take a while, he said. Yes, she said. It is. He looked at his tea. I don't want to talk about it anymore tonight, he said. Then don't, she said. He looked up at her. Something in his expression was different from anything she had cataloged in all the time she had been cataloging his expressions. Stripped, somehow. Fewer layers. A man at the end of a very long day sitting in his kitchen with a cup of tea made by someone who knew how he took it, and being, for a moment, just that.
You said to ask you again, he said, after the room was empty. She felt her heartbeat do its specific thing. The room is empty, she said.
Yes, he said.
Ask, she said. He looked at her across the kitchen island in the quiet house above the quiet bay with the guards on their rounds outside and the ordinary domestic evidence of 2 weeks of shared life arranged around them. Her tea, his cup, the pan he used for eggs hanging on the rack above the stove, a book she'd left face down on the counter 2 days ago and kept meaning to move. And he said, "Stay." Just that. One word. Not the arrangement, not the deal, not a month or a payment or a set of negotiated conditions. Just the one word with everything in it. She sat with it for a moment. Then she said, "I'm going to need to go back to Vegas." His expression moved. "Not permanently," she said. "I need to close up my apartment properly. I need to talk to Maya face to face. I need to bring Marco." "The cat," he said. "The cat," she confirmed. "He's been with a neighbor for 2 weeks and he's going to be furious." Something broke through on Luca's face. Not the almost smile, the real one, the one she had seen fully exactly twice, and it arrived with such startling completeness that it took her breath in a way she did not try to hide. "All right," he said. "We'll get the cat. And I need the room on the second floor to stay mine," she said. "My space, my rules in it." "Yes," he said, "and I keep teaching. The studio, the kids." "I know," he said. "And when you're in a situation where I need to know something, I'll tell you," he said. "I already agreed to that." "You broke it once," she said, "with the footage." His jaw tightened. "I know," he said. "That won't—" He stopped. "I will tell you everything, even the things I don't want to tell you." She looked at him. "This is not a safe life," she said. It was not a question. "No," he said. "It's not the life I planned." "No," he said. "It isn't. And you're not—" She paused, choosing it carefully. "You're not a simple person." "No," he said. "I'm not." She nodded. She picked up her tea and drank the last of it and set the cup down. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he said, and the word between them held everything they were not going to say tonight. The enormous, complicated thing that had arrived in 10 days of crisis and honesty and shared 3 a.m. silences, and neither of them reached for it directly because they didn't need to, because it was already there, and they both knew it. She got up and put her cup in the sink and picked up her shoes from the doorway. "Good night, Luca," she said. "Good night," he said. She went upstairs. She lay on her bed in the green dress she hadn't changed out of and looked at the ceiling and listened to the house settle around her. The distant sound of the bay, the occasional footstep of the perimeter guard, the low, specific silence of a large house in the small hours. Somewhere downstairs, the kitchen light was probably still on. Somewhere downstairs, Luca was probably still sitting at the island with his tea gone cold, doing the thing he did where he stayed inside a problem long after the problem had resolved, because letting go of vigilance was a skill he had not yet fully learned. She thought, "I could teach him that." She thought, "That will take years." She thought, "I have years." She closed her eyes and slept. She went back to Vegas on a Tuesday, 10 days later, with a security card that she had long since stopped finding strange and a list of things to handle that she had written on a notepad and organized by practical priority. The apartment took 3 hours. Boxes, decisions, the specific archaeology of a life being packed up and moved, some things kept and some released. Her neighbor, a retired woman named Dolores, who had been feeding Marco and was deeply unimpressed by the news coverage, handed the cat carrier over with the expression of someone who had decided to reserve judgment. Marco was, as predicted, furious. He expressed this by sitting at the very back of the carrier and refusing to acknowledge her existence for the entire drive back. Maya came to the apartment while Sienna was packing. They sat on the floor of the empty living room with takeout containers between them, and Maya looked at Sienna for a long time without saying anything, which was Maya's version of the deepest possible attention. "Tell me," Maya said. So Sienna told her. Not all of it. Not the operational details, not the names, not the specific mechanics of the things she had been in the room for, but the shape of it. The 10 days. The way it had actually been, as opposed to what the headlines had made it.
Maya listened without interrupting, which was not Maya's natural state, and the effort of it was itself a form of love. When Sienna was done, Maya said, "Do you trust him?" "Yes," Sienna said. "Why?" Sienna thought about it. "Because he tells me hard things," she said. "Not easy things. Not the things that make him look better. He told me about Mateo even though it cost him. He told me I was selected specifically, that I wasn't random, even though that was a terrible thing to tell me." She paused. "He said once that lying requires maintenance. I believe he meant it." Maya was quiet for a moment. "And his world," she said. "You can live in it?" Sienna looked at the empty apartment around her, the walls with the pale squares where pictures had been, the shelf marks on the carpet, the evidence of a life that had been here and was now somewhere else. "I've been living in it for 10 days, she said. "I'm still here." "That's not the same as choosing it," Maya said. "No," Sienna said, "but I'm choosing it now." Maya looked at her for a long time. Then she exhaled, the specific exhale of someone releasing an argument they had been holding in reserve, and said, "The HVAC is fixed." Sienna blinked. Last week," Maya said, "anonymous donation to the studio account, large enough to fix the HVAC and cover 3 months of studio fees for the kids on the waiting list who couldn't pay." She looked at Sienna steadily. Anonymous. Sienna thought about a man who funded orphanages through shell companies and pretended he had nothing to do with it. "I see," she said. "He did that before you said yes," Maya said. "I know," Sienna said. "Okay," Maya said, and then, after a moment, more quietly, "Okay." They finished the takeout, and Sienna finished the packing, and Maya helped carry boxes to the car with the wordless efficiency of 6 years of partnership. And when the last box was loaded, they stood on the sidewalk outside the building in the Vegas afternoon heat, and Maya hugged her. The same fierce, converting worry into contact hug from the studio held a little longer this time. "Call me," Maya said. "Actual calls, not texts." "I will," Sienna said. "And if you ever need to—" Maya stopped. "You have a place. You always have a place." "I know," Sienna said. "Thank you." She got in the car. Marco, in his carrier on the seat beside her, had upgraded his position from the back to the middle, which she understood as the beginning of forgiveness. She didn't look back at the building as the car pulled away. The months after the gala had a texture she had not anticipated. Not the dramatic resolution she might have imagined from inside the crisis, but something slower and more real. The specific work of 2 damaged systems learning to function in proximity without destroying each other. Luca's organization took time to repair. 4 of the 14 names turned out to be more deeply compromised than initially assessed, which meant careful restructuring of specific operations, which meant long weeks of Luca in the study with Renzo and Marco, and the particular focused grimness of men doing surgery on something they had built and valued. She stayed out of the operational details, not because she was excluded, but because she understood her boundary and held it. She was not in the business, she was not going to be in the business, and both of them were clear about that. But she was in the house. She taught at the studio 3 times a week, which had expanded. The fixed HVAC and the cleared waiting list had produced an influx of new students, and she and Maya were talking, seriously now, about a second location, something that had seemed impossible 6 months ago. She drove back and forth with security she had genuinely stopped noticing, and she spent evenings in the house above the Bay building, a life inside a life that was nothing like the one she had planned, and was, inexplicably and specifically, hers. Luca learned to be in the same space without managing it. This took time. He had spent 15 years as the singular center of his own orbit, with every person around him positioned in relation to him, and the habit of that was deep. There were evenings in the first weeks when she could feel him calculating, figuring out how to approach her, what she needed, how to give it, and she would look at him across the kitchen island and say, "Stop thinking about it and just eat your dinner." And something would break open on his face, the relief of being seen through rather than managed. He started sleeping more. She noticed this and did not comment on it, and privately thought it was the most significant evidence of anything. He came to her studio one Thursday afternoon in October without telling her he was coming. He simply appeared in the doorway of the main room while she was in the middle of a class with the adult beginners. And she saw him in the mirror and did not break her count. And the class continued, and when it was over and the students had gone, she turned and he was still there in the doorway, looking at the room with the expression he had when he was filing things away. "You're good at it," he said. "Thank you," she said, picking up a water bottle. "Not the teaching," he said, "although that too. The space you make." He paused. They felt safe. She looked at him. "Yes," she said. "That's the point." He nodded slowly. "I'd like to learn that," he said. She wasn't sure if he meant the dancing or the safety or both, and she thought about it while she drank her water, and then she said, "Tuesday morning, 9 a.m., we start from the beginning." His expression moved in the specific way that meant he had just been surprised and was deciding what to do about it. "All right," he said. He was, it turned out, not a natural mover. He had the physical control of a man who had trained his body for entirely different purposes, and the specific stiffness of someone accustomed to his body being a tool of function rather than expression. He was also, she discovered, genuinely willing to be bad at something, which was not a quality she had expected from him, and which told her more about who he was becoming than almost anything else she had observed. He fell on a Wednesday, working on a floor combination she had been teaching him for 3 weeks, a sequence that required you to trust your own weight on the way down. He mistimed the catch and went sideways onto the hardwood and lay there for a moment staring at the ceiling. She stood over him. "You okay?" she said. "No," he said. "Anything broken?" "My dignity," he said. She put her hand down. He took it. She pulled him up, and his hand was warm, and he was upright and looking at her from 6 inches away, and the room was very quiet. "Again," she said. He tried it again. He got it on the 3rd attempt. The catch, the recovery, the coming back up with his own weight, trusted rather than fought. He was breathing hard, and there was something on his face she had learned was his version of the specific joy that arrived after physical work that required everything you had. She thought, there it is. She thought, that's the person nobody in his world has ever seen. She thought, I see him. Don Ricci died in March. He went quietly, which was, according to Sophia, who called Luca with the news, exactly what he would have wanted. In his house in Pacific Heights, in his own bed, with the bay visible from the window. He had been ill for several months. Luca had known and had not told her, and when she found out, she asked him about it, and he said, I didn't want you to carry it. You had enough. That's not yours to decide, she said. I know, he said. I'm still learning. Learn faster, she said. He looked at her. Yes, he said. They attended the service together. It was small and private, the way significant things in this world tended to be. The public face presented elsewhere, the real moments kept close. Ferrante was there, Sophia, 4 other people she recognized from the gala. Luca stood beside her with their shoulders touching and did not speak, and she did not speak, and the bay was visible from where they stood, and the light on it was the specific March light of a city that had just survived another winter. Afterward, in the car, she took his hand. He looked at it, then at her. She said nothing. He turned his hand over and held hers properly and looked out the window at the city going past, and she looked out the other window, and the bay was everywhere in this city, visible from so many angles that you could never forget it was there. In April, she found the donations. She was not looking for them. She was in Luca's study leaving a book she had borrowed from his library, and Marco the analyst had left a folder on the desk that was not closed, and the open page was a distribution record for anonymous charitable transfers, and she stood there and read it without touching it. 14 organizations. Youth programs, after-school arts, 1 emergency housing shelter, 2 programs specifically for children in the foster system. The amounts were significant. The transfers had been occurring at regular intervals for 6 years. She closed the folder. She put her book on the shelf. She went back to the kitchen. When Luca came in for dinner that evening, she had made something herself for the first time. Pasta. Simple. The one thing she had been told at age 19 she could reliably produce. And she put it on the island between them and sat down. He looked at the pasta. At her. I found the folder Marco left on your desk, she said. He was very still. 6 years, she said. A pause. Yes, he said. The foster program, she said. The youth arts. Yes, he said. You were doing that, she said, while you were running everything else. People in my business accumulate money, he said carefully. I have always believed that money moved in one direction long enough becomes. I needed it to move in more than one direction. She looked at him across the pasta. You're not what people think you are, she said. I'm exactly what people think I am, he said. And also other things. Most people only have time for one of them. She thought about this. Eat the pasta before it gets cold, she said. He ate the pasta. The ocean house was Luca's idea. He brought it up on a Thursday evening in late spring, with the bay visible through the kitchen window in the specific gold of early evening light, in the way he brought up things that mattered, without preamble, directly, with the specific courage of a man who had learned to say things that cost him rather than managing toward them sideways. I have a property on the coast, he said. Marin, above the water. I bought it 10 years ago, and I've never. He paused. I've never spent any significant time there. I want to take you there. She looked at him. This weekend? She said. This weekend, he said. It was a 40-minute drive north across the bridge and then into the coastal hills. And the house when they arrived was smaller than she expected. The scale of something personal rather than impressive. A stone house on a bluff with the Pacific below it, and nothing visible on the water's horizon but water. Inside it smelled of salt and the specific quality of a space that had been kept but not lived in, and she walked through it room by room with her hand trailing the walls and Luca behind her in the particular silence of a man showing someone something he had not shown anyone before. She stopped in the main room at the wall of windows facing the ocean. The light was going. The water was shifting through colors she didn't have names for. Why did you buy it? She said. I needed somewhere that wasn't connected to anything, he said. Somewhere the business couldn't. He stopped. Somewhere I could just be a person. She looked at him. Have you ever been just a person here? She said. No, he said. I never came. She turned back to the window. Then we should come back, she said. Yes, he said. They stayed the weekend. They cooked badly in the small kitchen and walked on the beach below the bluff in the specific cold of a coastal May morning, and she taught him a combination on the flat stone of the front terrace with the ocean behind them, and he got it, slowly, and the specific joy arrived on his face again, and she thought, there it is. There it is. Saturday evening, she sat on the terrace with her feet up and her eyes on the water, and Luca came out and sat beside her. And they stayed like that for a long time, the light changing, the water changing, the two of them in it together. I want to tell you something, he said. All right, she said. He turned to look at her. In the evening light, his face was. She had so many words for it now, so many catalogued expressions. The whole geography of him built over months of daily proximity and 3 a.m. honesty and flour on the counter and falling on studio floors and the specific weight of his hand. She knew this face. She knew him. I don't know how to say this without it sounding like something I've calculated, he said. Everything I say sounds like I've calculated it. That's a problem I have. I know, she said. Say it anyway. I love you, he said. The ocean was below them, and the light was going, and there were no guards visible from here, and no phones, and no crisis, and no arrangement, just two people on a terrace above the Pacific. I know, she said. You know, he said. Luca, she said, and she said it the way she said his name when she meant it as the entire sentence. I moved here, I brought my cat. I put my books on your shelves, and I made you pasta, and I have been in your house for 6 months. She looked at him. What did you think that was? Something enormous and unmistakably tender moved across his face. I wasn't certain, he said. Yes, you were, she said. A pause, then the real smile, full, complete, the one that was only for her, that she had seen a handful of times and that still hit the same way every time, like a door opening in something that had been sealed. Yes, he said. I was. She took his hand on the armrest between them. The ocean moved below them. The last of the light held the horizon for another few minutes and then released it, and the first stars appeared in the east, and the air was cold the way coastal air was cold, clean and total. And she breathed it in and let it out and felt the specific thing that had no word,
the arriving of a thing you had been moving toward without knowing it, the recognition of something that had been true before you had the vocabulary for it. "I love you too," she said, in case that wasn't clear from the cat situation. He looked at the ocean, looked at her. The smile was still there, quieter now, settled into something more permanent. "The best thing that ever happened to me," he said, "was the worst night of my life." She thought about a casino floor and a tray of whiskey glasses, and a man with pale green eyes who had come back 5 times and told the truth every time it had cost him something. "It wasn't the worst night," she said. "It was just the beginning." He turned her hand over in his. The stars arrived in the south now. The ocean below them continued its enormous, indifferent business, which it had been conducting since long before any of this, and would continue long after. And underneath that permanence, the two of them sat on a stone terrace above it. Not uncomplicated people, not people who had arrived here without damage or cost, not people whose life together would be simple or safe or free of the specific gravity of who Luca Moretti was and what he carried, but people who had chosen it, who were choosing it, who had looked at the full, honest shape of the thing and said, yes, anyway. That was not a small thing. That was, in fact, the only thing that mattered. Marco the cat appeared from inside the house and sat down between their chairs and looked at the ocean with the expression of an animal who had decided, after considerable deliberation, that this was an acceptable arrangement. Sienna looked at him. Luca looked at him. "He approves," Sienna said. "Reluctantly," Luca said. "That's his highest rating," she said. Luca's thumb moved across her knuckles, slow and deliberate, the way he did things when he was not thinking about how he was doing them, when the calculation had gone quiet and there was only this: the hand, the ocean, the evening, the woman beside him who had refused to be afraid of him and had therefore, inadvertently and specifically, saved him. Not from his enemies. From the version of himself that had forgotten what stillness felt like. The stars continued arriving. The ocean continued below. And the two of them sat with it, all of it, the damage and the truth and the cost of it and the impossible ordinary grace of a life built in spite of everything. And they held on.